Hello everyone, this is Kawainame TV. This video is all about what if Sasuke didn't leave the Konoha. This story is a fanfiction. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Kindly click the bell button for more updates. Chapter 1. What if? Naruto walked into Sasuke's room at the hospital. Tsunade had said that he should be waking up soon, and the orange-clad ninja wanted to be there when he did. Sakura was already there, and it seemed like there was a problem. Sasuke was standing with his Sharingan spinning wildly. He caught sight of his blonde friend. "Fight me," he said. Naruto was reasonably shocked. "You just woke up, Sasuke. You probably shouldn't do any fighting yet." Sasuke wouldn't take no for an answer. So with Sakura's pleas falling on deaf ears, Sasuke and Naruto made their way to the roof. Kakashi had just left after giving his story to his wayward pupil, leaving Sasuke tied to the tree. He thought carefully about what he should do next, but he was drawing a blank. It was then that he noticed the 4 dark chakra signatures keeping watch over him. Kakashi had left him a kunai for when he was ready to get out of his bonds. He sliced the wires away, and went to the only place he could think of. Naruto's house. He could feel his pursuers close on his trail, but he sensed he wasn't in danger yet. He landed on the orange ninja's roof, and swung in through an open window. The blonde boy was asleep. "Naruto, wake up." Sasuke shook him on the shoulder. He mumbled something about protecting him from Sakura. Sasuke shook him again, rousing him this time. He stared blearily at his best friend. "Sasuke, what's up?" Naruto asked. Sasuke muttered a quick apology, and then stated the problem in hushed tones. "You're being followed?" Naruto asked, for once feeling the need for subtlety. Sasuke nodded. "What did you come here for? Why not go to Kakashi-sensei, or Granny Tsunade? Think for a minute. If I'd gone to them, the enemy would have attacked. Here, we can fight them. If we draw enough attention, we'll draw help." Sasuke explained. Naruto rubbed his chin. "What should we do?" he asked. "Let's start a fight," Sasuke suggested. His Sharingan was spinning again. Saken stood on top of the building Sasuke had went into. He was getting restless. He turned to his teammates. "That's enough waiting. Let's go." He was about to jump down to the balcony, when 5 Narutos leapt up, taking him by surprise. He was knocked back. "You're not getting near Sasuke," they yelled in unison. They paired off till one was by itself. The ones that were paired off formed the Rasengan, and the 2 that helped form them got together and made another one. The last Naruto made a few seals and his left arm erupted in lightning. "Let's go," the Narutos cried. They each picked a target and jumped in. The Naruto that was really Sasuke charged Saken with the Chidori. Saken moved just out of the way, but was unprepared for the kick that sent him into the air. Sasuke appeared behind him. The Leaf Nin began his attack, ending with the last kick and a call of Lion's Barrage. A hand shot out of Saken's chest, catching his foot at the last second. The hand threw Sasuke over into one of the Narutos, making it disappear in a cloud of smoke. Each Naruto clone, seeing how the Rasengan wouldn't do a whole lot right now, had used the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and there were about 100 Narutos running around the roof. A group of 5 Narutos charged one of Tayuya's zombie, familiar ogre things. One knocked it back, and 3 of them kicked it into the air. Naru, 2. The last one came from the sky. Uzumaki Barrage. The ogre hit the ground and disappeared. "That was pretty good for a moron like you," the redhead somewhat complimented. She played a melody on her flute, and the Naruto clones all exploded. The noise drew people from their homes, and several Jonin leapt to the roof to discover the fighting. "Damn, it's the Leaf Ninja. Retreat," Saken cried. The other 3 vanished from the roof. "This isn't over," Saken promised. Naruto and Sasuke were in the Hokage's office. She was dispatching them to go after the Sound 4, and either bring them back or eliminate them. They were told to get whatever genin they could find and begin the pursuit. When they protested, Tsunade told them the Chunin and Jonin were all taking in large missions to receive money for the village. At the village gates 5 genin lined up. First was Naruto and Sasuke. Then Shino Aburame, Neji Hyuga, and a recently healed Rock Lee. The spandex-wearing ninja was as youthful as ever, even if he moved with the slightest of limps. "This will be a wonderful test of the limits of my surgery," Lee exclaimed. His teammate shook his head. "Lee, you must take it easy. You've just healed, and Guy Sensei wouldn't want you to overdo it." Neji pointed out. Lee nodded, a little crestfallen. Shino looked on silently. All right, let's go. Naruto cried. The five of them raced out of the gates and into the forest. That was bullshit. Tayuya cried. The four sound nin were leaping from tree to tree at top speed. Jirobo stared at her. That's not very ladylike. You should watch your language. He scolded. Shut up, fat ass. The redhead returned. Both of you shut up. Sakin yelled. Now, prepare to make camp. Set up the traps. The others looked at him incredulously. Are you sure, Sakin? Those leaf nin could be on our trail. Kidomaru noted. Doesn't matter. We're more than powerful enough to get rid of them anyway. Lord Orochimaru said their Jonin would be too busy rebuilding and taking missions. I told you, Sakin. Kidomaru said. The leaf ninja had caught up. Shut up, Kidomaru. Jirobo, what are you waiting for? Jirobo slammed his palms against the ground with a cry of, Earth-style barrier, Earth Dome prison. The ground shattered under the impact and crashed over the team from Konoha. It left them in a dome of earth, and they could already feel the drain on their powers. Damn it! Naruto cried. He made his familiar cross seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The clone poofed into existence and worked up his chakra. The real Naruto ran toward the wall in the front, where Jirobo stood. Rasengan. The spiraling sphere made a gigantic dent in the wall that closed up almost instantly. What? Naruto asked incredulously. Wait a minute, Neji began. Byakugan. Veins leapt out around his eyes, and he gained laser focus. He glared around at the wall. This entire barrier is laced with the enemy's chakra. However, the chakra flows in a circle. Behind us is the weakest point in the wall. We must hit it there. I might have enough chakra to use another Rasengan. Naruto said. Shino shook his head. His Kikai bugs swarmed from his jacket sleeves. They burrowed into the wall behind them at the point Neji indicated. After a minute, the bugs returned to their home inside the bug user's body. Shino knocked on the rock like a door, and the back wall crumbled away. They got through your dome, fat ass. Tayuya cursed. Jirobo glared at her. You three keep going ahead. I'll hold them off and catch up when I'm done eating. Then we may as well tell Lord Orochimaru you've decided to stay in the fucking leaf village. Tayuya yelled as the three other sound ninja took to the trees. Jirobo turned back to them. Now then, he was thrown off his feet by a bandage-covered fist. Lee looked back at his teammates. You must keep following the sound ninja. I will defeat this one. The bushy brow promised with a salute. Are you sure? Shino asked quietly. Yosh! Lee exclaimed. The other four leaf ninja leapt forward into the trees. You shouldn't have done that, you piece of trash. Jirobo told Lee. I'm Jirobo of the South Gate. Strongest member of the Sound Four. I am Rock Lee, the handsome devil of the Leaf Village. Lee called back. He ran forward to punch Jirobo again. The large sound nin stomped the ground and rocks flew up, covering his body like armor. Lee leapt back. That is a most useful skill. I will have to see if I can get through it. Lee ran forward and ducked down. Leaf whirlwind. He spun quickly, throwing a leg out. Jirobo was thrown into the air and crash-landed in a small crater in the ground. When Jirobo got back to his feet, he had lost his rocky covering. That was unexpected. But try surprising me now. Lee moved in again, but Jirobo was ready. He slid to the side, quicker than his size belied. Crushing palm. He yelled, thrusting a palm into Lee's midsection. Lee was thrown across the clearing. The leaf nin stood up shakily. Your taijutsu is powerful. You are a very worthy opponent. Lee declared. What's your problem anyway, you piece of trash? I'd swear you were gay. Jirobo taunted. You are wrong, sir. I like the females. I model myself after Guy-sensei. Lee saluted like his sensei stood beside him. Did you say, Guy-sensei, or, gay-sensei? Jirobo laughed. He didn't laugh long. Before he could open his eyes, he was knocked into the forest, coming to a stop only after a tree or two fell on top of him. He stood back up. The large sound nin couldn't see his opponent, only multiple craters. He moved back into the clearing carefully. In the craters were what looked like training weights. You do not insult Guy-sensei. Lee yelled. He dropped from the sky and brought both legs down in a kick. However, in his overzealousness he misjudged the distance and flew right past him, into one of his own craters. Jirobo laughed at his good fortune. Pressure palm. He slammed his palm into Lee's chest as he laid in the crater. He was pushed down further by the incredible force, making the crater deeper. He was out of the crater in an instant. Leaf hurricane. Lee kicked high, giving Jirobo the opportunity to duck, only for the second kick to catch him in the face, knocking him clear out of sight. When he reappeared, marks spread across his body, turning it red. His hair thickened and spread. Thrusting shoulder. Jirobo launched himself across the clearing and jammed his shoulder into Lee's ribcage. Lee flew backward and hit a tree. He got up, feeling the strain on his body. Excuse me, I have recently had surgery. I must take my medicine, Lee said, pulling a bottle from his weapons pack. What he didn't notice was the kanji on the bottle that said, sake. Jirobo tried to take advantage of the momentary distraction and tried to close the gap between the two of them, but Lee had already taken his first sip. Lee brought up his arm and blocked Jirobo's attack, seemingly at random. Jirobo moved back a little, on guard. Lee just kept swaying a little. Jirobo figured it was safe to attack again. Crushing palm. Lee brought the other arm up and blocked again. He stared blearily at the sound nin. What are you doing? He slurred. You should not try to fight me, red man. I am. He slumped to the ground asleep. Pressure palm. Jirobo tried slamming his palm down, but Lee flew to his feet out of the way. The handsome devil of the Leaf Village. Hick. The green ninja finished with a flourish. He began swaying again, and disappeared from view. Before Jirobo could look for his opponent, he was struck several times in the chest by the handsome devil. Then Lee flipped onto his hands and did 7 of 8 super fast kicks to Jirobo's head. Luckily he was able to guard with his arms. That's enough. Jirobo growled. Earth style. Sphere of graves. He jammed his hands into the ground and pulled up a giant boulder. He launched it in Lee's general direction. It's unknown to this author whether Jirobo thought he could hit Lee or not, but he didn't. However, when the boulder hit, it broke into hundreds of pieces. More than one piece hit Lee, scratching him up a little, and one breaking his nose. At the sight of his blood, Lee sobered up quickly. What is going on? Crushing palm. Jirobo grabbed Lee by the face with his palm and slammed him into the ground. Next he tossed him into the air. Upwards attacking palm. The attack sent Lee flying into the air. When he came back down, Jirobo was ready with his next attack. Rising knee. Lee could swear he felt a few ribs break. You're just another piece of trash. Can't you use ninjutsu? If you can't, you'll never beat me. The sound nin taunted. I will be a splendid ninja by using only my taijutsu. That is my dream. Lee groaned. Your taijutsu is weak. Your dream is worthless. Just like you. Jirobo laughed. I will not allow you to insult my ninja way. Lee yelled. He crossed his arms over his chest. The first gate. Gate of opening. Open. Dirt swirled around him. He flashed under Jirobo and kicked him in the jaw, sending him skyward. Lee used the dancing leaf shadow technique to appear behind the large sound nin. His bandages wrapped around Jirobo and Lee began to spin. Primary lotus. Lee drilled Jirobo into the ground and landed nearby, panting heavily. Jirobo stood back up shakily. I told you. You'll have to better than that. Did your precious Gai-sensei teach you that? He taunted. Jirobo of the South Gate. Mocking my way of the ninja is bad enough, but insulting Gai-sensei is crossing the line. He crossed his arms again. The second gate. The gate of rest. Open. Lee stiffened as he felt his power return to full. The third gate. The gate of life. Open. The dust swirling around him whipped like a hurricane as his skin turned a raw red. A perfect cylinder of green energy appeared around him, shooting his hair up to stand on end. His pupils disappeared. The fourth gate. The gate of pain. Open. His muscles rippled and Lee staggered. But he continued. The fifth gate. The gate of closing. Open. Now it is over, Lee declared. Hidden lotus. He knocked Jirobo into the air again. He followed, hitting the sound nin in every direction. He moved like a blur, and hit Jirobo toward the ground. His bandages whirled around the large ninja. Lee pulled back hard, drawing Jirobo back toward him at high speed. Lee hit him with a solid strike with his right arm and his left leg. Jirobo hit the ground at a speed that would have killed him if not for his curse mark. Luckily, for good measure, Lee dropped into another attack. Dynamic entry. The powered-up leaf nin crashed into Jirobo with both feet. His ribcage fell in on itself, crushing his heart. The red receded from both ninja. Jirobo's faded into his level 1 seal, and then retracted into his seal. Lee's red disappeared, his pupils returned, and his muscles quivered. He hit the ground. Lee has defeated that sound ninja. Neji told the others. How do you know? Sasuke asked. I know his chakra better than anyone except Guy-sensei. He was forced to use his hidden lotus. The others, except Sasuke of course, were shocked. You mean the attack he used on Gaara in the Chunin exams? Neji nodded. Now, we must be careful. We've caught up to the other sound ninja. So, your friends escaped. Lucky them. I'll make quick work of you Aburame brat. Kidomaru promised. Shino stood silently. Kidomaru bristled. I'm tired of hearing about the Aburame clan, and their uppity natures. You're going down you little bastard. We shall see. Shino said. Kidomaru made a hand seal. Ninja art. Spider web flower. He shot several nets of webbing out of his mouth at Shino. The bug user stood still, getting trapped by all of them. He was attached to the tree behind him. I did this to prove a point sound nin. Shino said quietly. His skin rippled, turning into a mountain of bugs. These bugs ate all the chakra in the webs, and then ate the webs. A bug clone, Kidomaru thought. The real Shino leapt down from the tree his clone was trapped against. I can see you just might be fun to toy with. I'm not just any sound nin. I'm Kidomaru of the East Gate. The spider nin declared. Very well Kidomaru of the East Gate. I am Shino Aburame of Konoha. Shino returned confidently. Be smug with me, huh you bastard. Ninja art. Spiral spider web. Kidomaru formed a ball of webbing in his mouth. He grabbed hold with all 6 arms and threw the web, making it spread out wide. As close as they were, Shino could make no move. He was captured. You from the sound don't learn do you? Shino's bugs crawled out of his jacket, and ate away at the webs. I think I'll finish this up quickly. He added. His bugs swarmed away from him, swirling around Kidomaru. Hidden jutsu. Beetle sphere. The dome of insects suddenly contracted, forming a body-tight layer of bugs that would eat at Kidomaru's chakra till he perished. When the bugs lifted off him to drop Kidomaru's body, Kidomaru drooped to the ground unscathed, covered in some kind of gold armor. This is my sticky spider thread armor. I excrete it from my sweat glands, and it hardens with contact to oxygen. That was a decent attempt, but you'll find I'm harder to get rid of than your average garden variety spider. Kidomaru promised. However, I won't be able to defeat you in this state either. Your Kikai will eat the chakra out of any attack I use. Curly marks spread over his body, leaving his skin a dark red almost gray color. 2 horns jutted from his head causing his headband to fall off. A third eye opened on his forehead. Spikes shot from all 6 shoulders and forearms. His hair grew out and turned white. He also gained a spider's spinnerets, enabling him to spin webs without using chakra. You have no chance now. Kidomaru vowed. He leapt up into the trees, and spat out more of his special spider sticky thread. It took the shape of a large bow. The string and the arrow came from his mouth. He shot regular webs from all 3 right arms and 1 left arm, suspending him in midair. Holding the bow in his first left arm, and pulling back more on the string with his second, he used his feet to push the bow further away from the string, increasing the power exponentially. This is my spider bow. Oh, I forgot. You can't see me, but I can see you. He cried. He released the bowstring from his mouth and the arrow streaked through the trees, on target. It flew from the cover of the forest flying straight at Shino. It shot through him and hit the ground behind. It made a decent-sized crater. Damn, another bug clone. Kidomaru cursed as he watched Shino disassemble into thousands of small bugs. The real Shino didn't reappear. Where is that leaf bastard? The spider nin asked. Shino's voice rang out. You'd never believe me if I told you how gullible you are. Kidomaru still couldn't find him, but he had webs attached to his fingers spread out. If Shino touched one, Kidomaru would feel it and be on top of him before he could release his precious bugs. Sei didn't notice one of said bugs crawling around on his tunic. All of a sudden he was surrounded by bugs again. Hidden jutsu. Beetle sphere. Shino called from the leaves above Kidomaru. The bugs closed in again. It didn't work. Kidomaru emerged from the bug suit wearing more of his gold armor. Did you think just because there's more to cover that I wouldn't be able to use my sticky spider thread armor? The spider nin asked as the armor chipped off. Now I've got a lock on you, he announced, making another arrow. This one had a drilled end. He shot new strings onto his bow and got back in position. He fired. It was connected by a thick string to Kidomaru's mouth, and he guided it. As it flew into the trees, he whipped the string a few times, and it moved following Shino's chakra signature. After a decent chase, he felt the arrow hit home. Shino had almost gotten out of the way in time, but the arrow struck him. He was hit in the middle of the back, barely missing the spine and just passing between the lungs and punched through his chest. He grabbed the arrow as he fell to the ground. In the middle of his pain, he examined the arrow. He wasn't shocked to discover that it was reasonably hollow. The string went all the way through the arrow and stopped just behind the tip. It gave him an idea. Kidomaru felt the string keep moving around for a little while before it finally stopped moving. He was feeling pretty good, until he felt a drain on his body. He felt a piercing pain in his organs and intestines. He felt something crawling on his tongue, and he saw a bug crawl from his mouth out onto the bowstring. It was followed by another, and another, until hundreds of bugs were crawling from his body. The pain hadn't let up. He fell from the branch. He returned to his normal form. Shino staggered into view, clutching his chest. The arrow was gone. "You leaf bastard," Kidomaru gasped. Bugs still crawled from his mouth and the pain began to lessen. But not enough. "How the hell did you manage to get your bugs through my web?" He continued. "Your arrow was hollow. It was simple to see that you had that string going through it. My Kikai burrowed into your chakra-laced string and followed it to you. You should have cut the string. Your insides were the only thing you six couldn't protect." Shino breathed. There was a trickle of blood coming from his mouth that was becoming steadily thicker. Kidomaru's three eyes rolled back into his head and he stopped breathing. Shino fell backward into a sitting position. The rest of the bugs flew from Kidomaru's mouth and all the insects went back to Shino. He laid back while the bugs began the long process of healing him using the spider nin's chakra. He blacked out. Chapter 2. Orochimaru's Elite. "Hey Neji, check out Shino with your Byakugan," Naruto called back. The pale-eyed genin let chakra flow through his optic nerves and activated the powerful dujutsu. "I'm never gonna get used to those creepy eye veins," the orange-clad genin joked. "Quiet Naruto. I don't see Shino," Neji began. "Wait, there he is. He's on the ground, healing. The spider nin has perished." "Yes," Naruto cried. "Another one bites the dust." "Calm down Naruto. There's still those other two." Sasuke berated the overeager ninja. If only they knew how wrong they were. "Congratulations. You go free," Kabuto complimented with a subtle hint of what was to come. The recipient of this gift was a white-haired man named Jirobo. "That's fantastic Kabuto. Thank you." The man turned and began to walk toward what he thought was the exit. He saw a vision of a gigantic white snake, jaws split wide, ready to engulf him. He let out a blood-curdling scream. "Looks like you're too late getting Sasuke, Kimimaro," Kabuto thought as Jirobo stood back up. He looked to the silver-haired ninja with gold snake eyes. "It can't be helped," he rasped. "In 3 years, I'll be able to transfer again. I'll make sure it's Sasuke." Shadow Clone Jutsu. 20 Narutos flew at the two-sound ninja. Quick as a flash, Tayuya put her flute to her lips and began to play. All the clones disappeared and the real Naruto hit the forest floor. "That was genjutsu," Sasuke cried. Neji contemplated. Sakin had ran on a moment ago. "Sasuke, get Naruto and follow that other sound ninja." He blinked and his veins bulged out. "My eyes see through all genjutsu." Sasuke nodded and leapt down to his fallen friend. "Please, my genjutsu are absolute," Tayuya cried, putting her flute back to her lips. Neji appeared beside her. "Nothing is absolute." He slammed both palms into her midriff. Gentle fist. Blue chakra propelled Tayuya away from the leaf ninja. "Ha!" Tayuya began as she stood back up. "You must be a Hyuga. You might be worth the trouble after all. I am Tayuya of the North Gate." She finished with a flourish and a few notes from her flute. "I am Neji Hyuga from the Hyuga clan of Konoha. It is my job to defeat you. We'll see you boastful bastard." Tayuya played another few notes. Summoning jutsu. 3 ogres appeared from a cloud of smoke. "These are my rage ogres. They do my fighting for me." She then began an intricate piece of music, sending the ogres into a frenzy, beginning to attack. The ogre with the metal club swung down. Neji barely got away. "Damn, these ogres are as fast as they are powerful. I have to cut that sound nin's chakra supply," Neji decided as he began systematically dodging toward Tayuya. "Don't think I don't know what you're up to leaf bastard," Tayuya cried. She played louder and faster and Neji fell to his knees. Wind style. Orientation destruction wave. Neji clamped his hands over his ears and the ogre with the club knocked the white-eyed boy back into the trunk of the tree he perched on. Ninth passage. Demon revolution. Each ogre forced its mouth open, ripping the threads that connected their lips. Blue chakra flew from each mouth, forming 3 snakes of energy. Each had multiple mouths along its length. She played another quick melody and all 3 snakes struck out at Neji. He tried to move. It's no use. My ogres will seek out your chakra, and they'll eat all of it. Then I'll give them something to eat. Rotation. He whirled around and the snakes hit a dome of his chakra. They were shredded, but they managed to eat some of the thick energy. What the hell was that? Tayuya cried as the snakes began to reform. That was my clan's most powerful defense. The 8 trigrams palm rotation. Neji moved fast, before the ogres could get another lock on him. The snakes moved after him quickly. Tayuya saw him going for her, and brought 2 of the ogres around to block him in a triangle formation. I've got you now. That's where you're wrong, sound Nin. Neji smirked. I finally got all your ogres into my circle. Her eyes widened and she started to play again. Neji was too fast. He crouched down and the yin-yang symbol appeared at his feet. The circle spread from there, encircling all 3 ogres. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. He whirled and struck out in all directions. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. All 3 ogres vanished into clouds of smoke. Now, it is time for this battle to be over. Neji declared. Palm heel strike. He laced his right hand with chakra and thrust the heel in between the Sound Nin's breasts. She doubled over. Now, I think it's time you fell to Tayuya of the North Gate. Music began playing again. It's a nice trick, but that attack has paralyzed you. Don't put your limits on me, leaf bastard. Demon flute. Chains of Fantasia. Neji hit his knees in surprise. His arms were spread out at shoulder height at his sides. In his mind he was in a red world. Sturdy metal threads immobilized him. He felt a great burning sensation in his arms. He looked, and saw that they were melting away. Back, outside, Tayuya looked on with amusement. I told you, you bastard. My genjutsu is absolute. She crouched down close to him to see the panic in his eyes. However, they were clear. And I told you, nothing is absolute. He leapt up. Let me treat you to a move I've only perfected recently. Tayuya brought her flute up. Not a chance. 8 trigrams. Air palm. He thrust his arms out and chakra burst from his hands. The blast hit the sound ninja and knocked her away, into a group of smaller trees that collapsed on top of her. It is finished, Neji declared. But then the trees exploded and a figure landed close to Neji. Tayuya had transformed. Her brown eyes turned gold, and her red hair became much longer, becoming tinged pink. Her skin turned brown and multiple white horns sprouted from her head. Damn brat. I didn't expect to have to go to second state. She reached out and bitch slapped the genin, knocking him to the ground. It's time to play you a melody of death. She lifted her flute to her lips. Wind style. Sensory augmentation. The sounds entered Neji's ears and he fell to his knees again. My genjutsu enhanced your senses by so much that they overloaded. You can't see me. Hell, you can't even hear me. But I can kill you now. She leapt down and readied her flute. It had a sharpened end that worked like a blade. One thrust of this, and you'll be out of your misery, you piece of trash. She brought it down, but it was caught at the last second by Neji's hand. What the hell? You couldn't have heard me coming. Your ears don't work. My eyes aren't supposed to work either. But I told you, he said, looking her straight in the eyes. My eyes see through genjutsu. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. He landed the strikes and embedded her a foot into the tree behind her, sealing her chakra. Or so he thought. She lifted her flute again. How about a ninjutsu then? Wind style. Banshee sound. The wall of wind and sound slammed into Neji and threw him away from her. She struggled to get out of the tree. You just don't get it, do you? I analyzed that jutsu with my ogres. It won't do anything to me in my release form. She yelled after him. He walked back into the clearing, but he stumbled, and was disorientated. Finally, something worked on you. She moved in fast and stabbed her flute under his ribs, nearly hitting his heart. It was almost certainly fatal. Neji grabbed her arm. I was hoping I was going in the right direction. It seems you found a jutsu that can bypass my Byakugan. But it doesn't matter. You say the 64 strikes won't harm you. Well, you're still in my circle. Another circle appeared around the normal area of attack. Wah, what's this? It's 8 trigrams. 128 palms. He began the attack. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. 128 palms. After the last of the strikes, he sent a gentle fist strike straight into her heart, propelling her away with so much force that it sent a wall of trees down on top of her. He's an amazing piece of trash, she thought before the trees crashed down. Hit him, Naruto. Rasengan. The spiral sphere in Naruto's hand slammed into the ground where Sakin had been standing. You'll have to do better than that to stop me, the sound ninja declared. He charged in. Multiple legs barrage. Sakin swung his right leg up to kick, and 2 more legs sprouted alongside the original. Naruto was caught off guard and go knocked to the side. He felt his ribs crack. Damn it. He's powerful. Naruto yelled to Sasuke. We'll double team him. Sasuke yelled back. He made a few seals and his arm erupted in lightning. Chidori. 1000 birds. Rasengan. Naruto formed the Rasengan in his left hand, with the Chidori on Sasuke's right. They crossed the attacks together and grasped hands in a show of brotherhood and the need to kick Sakin's ass. Let's go. The 2 of them took off so fast they sent up a cloud of dust and rock chips. Sakin smirked and dodged easily. You guys suck. That may be, but do you know the upside to an assassination jutsu? Sasuke asked. Naruto answered for him. It's meant for speed. They disappeared. What the hell kinda cheap trick is this? Sakin asked. Don't drop your guard, jackass. Behind you. Chidori Senri. 1000 spiraling birds. The attack shot straight through Sakin's back, out his chest. Then, the energy shot past, leaving their arms sticking out of his chest and sending 1000 wind-shaped like birds shooting into the air. They turned around and began to spin, electricity around them. That's our cue to run. Naruto cried. They too jumped away as the birds hit Sakin with the force of a miniature explosion. Naruto and Sasuke sat against the rocks of the gully and tried to catch their breath. That was pretty powerful, Sasuke commented. I know, right? What the hell's with this nonchalant conversation? The smoke cleared. Sakin stood, cut completely in half, saving his head. Blood poured from his side. There was an identical Sakin beside him. His opposite side was bleeding heavily. Black marks spread over their visible skin. It turned red, and their hair lengthened and turned white. A horn came out of each of their foreheads. The part of their bodies that was destroyed was replaced by gray armor. Well, sorry about that, Ukin. The only way to survive that was to separate. Even then, we had to go to second state. The other boy glared at his twin. Damn it. Let's get this over with. He vanished. Whatever you say, Ukin. Get rid of the orange one, and we'll capture Sasuke. Sakin said. Don't tell me what to do, you bastard. I'll end this quick. Ukin's disembodied voice promised. Naruto fell to his knees. What the hell? Blood dripped from his mouth. Hey kid, over here. Naruto forced his neck to twist around, and saw a sight that sent him recoiling onto his ass. Ukin's head protruded from his shoulder and glared at him. Welcome to our demon parasite jutsu. Ukin declared. Even as we speak, I'm corrupting your cells. You won't last a min. Ukin trailed off. His eyes widened and he began to scream. What is it, brother? Sakin cried. He made to move forward, but Sasuke blocked the way. Don't forget about me. Sakin made no further movements, and kept his eyes on his brother. Ukin's head writhed around for a few more seconds before he flew out of Naruto's body to stand beside his brother once more. They both launched a fist out and Sasuke slid to a stop beside Naruto. What's wrong, Ukin? That kid has something else in him. The older twin said. He was barely standing. It was horrible. There was this cage and inside was this pair of menacing red eyes and this terrible voice. You're exaggerating, Ukin. Let's just finish them off. Ukin grasped his brother's arm and went back inside him. He poked his head and neck out beside his brother's and they began to advance again. Ah! Naruto stood back up, eyes glowing red. He bit his thumb and made a few hand seals. Summoning jutsu. When the massive smoke cloud cleared, Gamabunta sat battle ready. Naruto, where's Jiraiya? That bastard owes me some sake for last time I was summoned. I'll make sure to tell him later, Chief Toad, but I'm a little preoccupied here. Naruto pointed to Saken and Ukin who were gaping at the giant summon. How the hell did that leaf bastard summon something so big? Saken asked the older twin. Who gives a damn? Let's kill it. They each bit their thumbs as well and made the same seals Naruto did. Summoning Jutsu. Rashomon on the offensive. The twins called together. A giant metal gate shot out of the ground. It was red and the metal door had a demon's face emblazoned on it. The mouth opened and launched an inferno at the chief toad. Please, do better, Gamabunta cried. He opened his mouth wide. Water style. Water bullet. He fired a dense blast of water in the shape of a cannonball at the flames rushing forward. It cut through them like butter and hit the gate. At the last second the gate's mouth opened and swallowed the water. You can't get past the Rashomon gate. It's indestructible, Saken claimed. We'll see. Naruto, get on my head, Gamabunta cried. Naruto leapt onto his back and ran up. What next? You got anything that can make a fire? Naruto looked thoughtful for a second. Then his face cleared. Sasuke, get up here. The Uchiha jumped up beside his friend. Alright, I'm going to fire a stream of oil at them. You use your strongest fire-style jutsu. He inhaled deeply as Sasuke made some hand seals. The leaf nin took a deep breath. Fire style. Toad flame bombs. Sasuke shot off 6 bursts of fire just as Gamabunta spewed the oil. They combined and each fireball made the blast bigger. It engulfed Saken, Ukin, and the Rashomon. When the flames died, Saken and Ukin stepped out from behind the steaming gate. The face had transformed into a horrible grimace. That was a good try, but it didn't work. Saken boasted. They all heard a whistling noise and looked up to see Naruto flying from Gamabunta's head with a Rasengan in his hand. Ha! That won't work either. That doesn't have enough force to break the Rashomon. True to Saken's words, Naruto's Rasengan didn't do much damage. It only chipped the nose. Get back, Naruto! Sasuke yelled. Naruto looked behind him and scrambled away. Gamabunta had leapt high across the ground, closing space between the two summons in a second. He pulled out his Yakuza sword. Toad blade cut. As he swung the sword down, the Rashomon opened its jaws wide and released the attack it absorbed from before. Both summons vanished in a poof of smoke. Damn it, I thought that Toad would be a wallet before the attack landed. Saken said. Moron, you shouldn't be so cocky. Ukin scolded. If you guys are finished. Sasuke asked. You'll stay out of this. Saken yelled. He expelled Ukin from his body. Let's just kill these leaf bastards. Fine. They both ran forward. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Naruto cried. Then there were 1,000 Narutos standing to battle. They all swarmed Ukin, who was running a little behind his younger brother. 3 of the Narutos slid across the forest floor, kicking Ukin into the air. Naruto. Then each clone gave a quick 2 punches, left and right. 2K Uzumaki barrage. The clones finished with both fists crashing into Ukin from every possible angle. Ukin flew back and crashed into the ground. Saken whirled around. Ukin. His back was turned. Big mistake. Saken whirled around to face Sasuke's swirling Sharingan. He was about to make a move when Sasuke got there first. Chidori. Saken gasped. The lightning-based attack went straight through the right side of Saken's chest. The unarmored part of his body, he glared at Sasuke and tried to speak. The result was blood bubbling out of his mouth. His skin faded back to pale, his horn receding. His hair shortened and the armored half of his body transformed back to normal. Damn it! He hit the pebbly ground as Sasuke pulled his arm out of his chest cavity. Ukin was just standing to his feet and he saw his brother fall. Saken. No. Ukin disappeared into Sasuke and then reappeared behind him. He crashed his armored fist into Sasuke's head and he crumpled. Sasuke. Naruto hunched slightly and his red-tinted eyes slitted. His nails grew out, but his hair and whiskers stayed the same. He hadn't quite begun his transformation. He held out his right hand, palm up, and grabbed his wrist with his left. A blue Rasengan started spinning shakily. A small strand of red chakra mixed in and turned the attack a light purple. Naruto ran at Ukin. I'm sorry, brother, Ukin said softly. He disappeared and Saken's body stood up. The hole in his chest closed and he took on a new transformation. Both horns stuck out of his head, and his entire body below the neck was armored. This is our ultimate technique. It can only be used when one of us is in complete control of both bodies. It is our true second state. Ukin declared. I'll avenge my brother. The surviving brother launched himself at Naruto. The whiskered ninja turned and shoved the Rasengan into Uken's armored chest. The armor fractured, but didn't give. Blood dripped out of Uken's mouth around the fangs he bared in a grin. It didn't work, you leaf bastard. And this armor heals itself after a little while. I'm just near invincible. He ran his claws through Naruto's back. Naruto disappeared in a cloud of smoke and a kunai sprouted from Uken's chest. Naruto stood by Sasuke. I substituted myself with a clone while you fused together. Naruto explained. A pretty good effort, but this kunai won't do a damn's bit of difference. Uken promised. Naruto smirked. Boom. Uken's eyebrows furrowed. He looked down to see a paper bomb attached to the knife. Wah! The explosion threw him off his feet and chunks of the armor clattered to the ground around him. Believe it, motherfucker, Naruto said with an unbelieving smirk. I can't believe that worked. All of a sudden Uken was standing in front of him. He slashed his claws across Naruto and the orange-clad ninja fell back. With bleary eyes he saw his kunai had completely destroyed the armor on Uken's chest, and that he was open. But he couldn't get up. And now I'm gonna console myself by ripping your throat out with my fangs. He bared them and dove at the blonde's neck. Chidori. Sasuke traveled the space between them in half a second, thrusting a lightning-charged fist into the unarmored section of Uken's shared body. The force of the shock and the blood spewing from his mouth was enough to break Uken's fangs off. The sound nin grabbed Sasuke's arm in both hands, keeping him in place. He was looking off in the distance. You leaf bastards are dead now. He spoke around the blood. Finish this trash off, Kimimaro. Sasuke looked over his shoulder and saw the white-haired sound ninja. He tried pulling his arm out, but the dying sound nin's grip was still strong. Do not order me around. You failed, Lord Orochimaru. Kimimaro took his time walking toward the for all intents and purposes immobilized Sasuke. He made a finger gun and pointed it at Sasuke's head. Finger bullet, he said calmly. His skin peeled back and he switched targets quickly. The small bone bullet flew at high speed into Uken's head, right between the two horns. His grip loosened and he slid off Sasuke's arm. You are Sasuke Uchiha, aren't you? I can tell by your eyes. Sasuke let his Sharingan recede. I'm here to collect you for Lord Orochimaru. Sasuke's eyes widened and the Sharingan came back up with a vengeance. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you much. He was about to make a move, but was stopped by an unexpected interruption. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 1,000 Narutos burst into existence around them. Get out of there, Sasuke! Naruto cried, lost in the crowd. Sasuke leapt out of the huge circle in the confusion. Kimimaro smirked and crouched down. A needle-like bone sprouted from both shoulders, hands, elbows, and knees. Willow dance. The white-haired nin began whirling and stabbing with the bone blades, making clone after clone poof away in a cloud of smoke. In seconds they were all gone. I'm more powerful than those fools you faced before. He stood up and the bones retracted back into his body. The real Naruto stood looking out of his league. Kimimaro appeared behind Sasuke and put him in a chokehold. It's time for us to go, Sasuke. At that Naruto became himself again. I won't let you take Sasuke. You can't stop me. Naruto's whiskers started to thicken, and so did his hair. His canines poked out past his lips. We'll just have to find out then, won't we? Tufts of grass were ripped from the ground as Naruto disappeared from view, his speed increased exponentially by the fox. Kimimaro pushed Sasuke away from him just as Naruto's fist closed in on his chest. Bones shot from his sternum and caught his fist. The white spears dug into his wrist. Larch dance. Damn, Naruto gasped. He pulled his fist back, making Kimimaro follow. He drew his left fist back and drove it into the bone-wielding nin's face. Just as the punch hit, Kimimaro released Naruto's hand, sending him flying back from the momentum. Camellia dance. Kimimaro popped his shoulder out of its socket, drawing it out of his shirt. The skin peeled away from his shoulder and the hilt of a bony sword began to emerge. He grasped it and pulled it out. The sound nin began another dance of thrusts and strikes that Naruto was barely fast enough to dodge. Sasuke was standing nearby, rubbing his throat. Damn it, I can't do anything like this. I've gotta help Naruto. Ah, shadow clone jutsu. Naruto yelled. He made a clone to throw him back farther and take the hit for him. Kimimaro didn't stay away for long. He closed the distance in one long step. He was in the middle of a thrust when he was interrupted. Fire style. Fireball Jutsu. The orange fireball was offset with ominous purple tongues. Kimimaro moved out of the way. A terrible cracking made the bone nin and Naruto turn in Sasuke's direction. The Uchiha had just cracked his neck. The purple chakra from the curse mark spiraled around him and black flame markings spread across his visible skin. Sasuke, what are you doing? Naruto asked. We both need to be as strong as possible to beat this guy. We've got to get back to the others and get to the village. We're too weak from that last battle. I was out of chakra, and you needed help. Don't let the Uchiha fool you, leaf brat. He has succumbed to Lord Orochimaru's power. Alright Sasuke, let's kick this guy's ass. Then, we'll kill Orochimaru, and you'll never have to worry about that curse mark again. Shadow Clone Jutsu. One clone came to life and began swirling chakra into the Rasengan while Sasuke completed the seals for the Chidori and the familiar lightning erupted over his arm. They crossed the attacks and grasped arms once more. Think you can keep up with our ultimate combo? Naruto asked with a smirk. They vanished, moving far faster than when they first completed the attack. Sasuke lagged behind for a few seconds, but an unseen shift in his eyes brought him up to the same speed as Naruto. The tomo in his eyes split, going from 2 to 3. A change was occurring in Kimimaro as well. Straight lines spread across his skin at all angles, branching till they occupied a space everywhere on his body. The attack came up behind, just like before, but it was stopped at the skin. It couldn't pierce through. Do you know why? Kimimaro asked without turning. It's because I created a layer of bone under my skin. Only the strongest pressures can break through. Kimimaro finally turned to face them. I don't understand why Lord Orochimaru seeks you to be his vessel. The bone nin remarked to Sasuke. You're weak. He looked to Naruto. But I must follow my lord's will. I will kill you and take Sasuke Uchiha to my master. There will be no more playing around. Kimimaro's chakra transformed again, and his body followed suit. His skin turned a dark gray-brown, and his hair turned steel gray. His forehead wrinkled and his eyes turned gold. Around the eye was a black marking. A tail sprouted from his lower back, and multiple bone spikes burst out of his back. Clematis dance. Vine. He reached behind his head and the end of his spine broke through the skin. He grabbed and pulled, bringing the spine out. It was a whip made of his vertebra. Oh damn, Sasuke and Naruto said together. They leapt back. I don't have any long-range attacks. Naruto cried. Sasuke made some seals. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. The fireballs were swatted away with the whip. Surely you don't think you can defeat me like this? Kimimaro mocked. He began to charge. Sasuke, let's hit him with everything, Naruto cried. He made the familiar cross seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Sharingan. 10 of the clones ran at the slower Kimimaro. They all leapt into the air and unzipped their jackets as Sasuke finished the seals for a jutsu. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. The huge ball of flames caught the clones and the embers licked the paper bombs strapped to all them. A giant explosion rocked the ground and the rest of the clones jumped into the smoke cloud. Sasuke's eyes widened. Naruto. Down. Naruto hit the dirt just as the spine whip slashed across where his head had been. The smoke quadrupled as every clone was defeated. When it cleared, Kimimaro was unscathed by even the explosion. Damn it. Naruto cried. What do we have to do to kill this guy? I am Lord Orochimaru's most powerful servant. You cannot kill me. We'll see. Let's try again, Naruto. Sasuke proposed. Naruto looked back at him. There's nothing we can do. We can have power. Sasuke's eyes were black around the Sharingan. His hair grew out and turned a blue-gray. His skin darkened and became the color of ashes. A black shuriken mark blossomed over his nose. Sasuke, what's happening? He's giving into the curse mark. Kimimaro smirked. He is losing the battle. Naruto looked back at his friend as giant hand-like wings burst from his back. Don't give in. We can beat him without using the curse mark. Naruto tried to reason with Sasuke. Kimimaro began to laugh. There's no reasoning with a man mad with power. The bone user slashed Naruto with the whip and made him fall back, a bleeding mess. You aren't worth messing with. I want to see how far Lord Orochimaru's vessel has progressed. Kimimaro began to charge again, not knowing that Naruto had already began healing the grievous wound. Kimimaro swung his whip again, wrapping it around Sasuke's new form. The spikes of the vertebrae dug into the Uchiha's gray skin. That would have killed me if you'd done it earlier. Sasuke noted. This is power. Sasuke flared his wings out, making the bones dig in deeper. He winced, but saw that the cartilage connecting the bones was straining to keep him bound. You won't be able to keep me contained much longer. The Uchiha told the sound nin. He had enough room to move his hands, and took a second to weave some seals. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. He breathed the multiple fireballs into Kimimaro at close range. He staggered back a little from the intense attack, and that was all Sasuke needed. He opened his wings fully, and Kimimaro couldn't keep the whip taut around the writhing leaf nin. Sasuke broke free. He put his arm out and the blue lightning of the Chidori blazed down his arm. Take this. Sasuke thrust in and Kimimaro stopped the attack by grabbing the genin's wrist with his right hand. Nice try. But not good enough. He held out his left arm and a bone began poking out of the palm. It spiraled out and encased his arm until he had a giant bone drill. Clematis dance. Flower. He declared. I'm not going to kill you. Only disable you until Kabuto can heal you up. He had just began to attack when he was interrupted. I won't be ignored. A red chakra claw wrapped around Kimimaro's head, gripping the left side of his face. His thick skin began burning immediately. The claw pulled back and Kimimaro was forced to whirl away from Sasuke. I won't let you take Sasuke. The blonde ninja was coated in red chakra in the shape of a fox with one tail. As he stood in one spot, the rocks at his feet began splintering like wood. That's fine by me. I'll get rid of you first. Kimimaro jammed the flower of his fourth dance into Naruto's stomach. Naruto's blood splattered from his mouth onto Kimimaro's bone, but he didn't fall. Naruto, Sasuke rasped. The hardest material can still be pierced. By itself. Normally, something that cryptic would fly right over Naruto's head, but all of his attributes were being enhanced by the powers of the fox, and he caught on quickly. But Kimimaro caught on too. Good luck breaking these bones. He taunted. Naruto raised his head and looked the bone user in the eyes. His smile was all fangs. What do you have to smile about? The blonde brought his right hand up and showed what was nestled in his palm. A purple Rasengan. Naruto crashed the Rasengan into the clematis flower and it began to crack. This is impossible. Believe it. Naruto cried as the bones gave and split. Kimimaro stumbled back, and Naruto ripped the bones from his stomach. They still spiraled and ended in the drill-like point. The blonde ninja reared back and shoved the bones into Kimimaro's chest. Blood dripped from his mouth and from the place where the bones sprouted from his chest. Naruto jumped back to land by Sasuke. Good job, Naruto. Let's end this bastard. Naruto formed another Rasengan. The attack rotated much more rapidly than before, and another tail began to bubble up behind him. The Rasengan began to shudder, like it was unstable. Rocks and dirt were thrown into the air as Naruto took off. Ultimate Rasengan. 1. The super-powered attack crashed into the jagged stump of bone poking from Kimimaro's body. The bones splintered on impact and were driven further into the sickly ninja's body. Instead of his abdomen, there wasn't anything but a bloody, pulpy hole. Finish him off, Sasuke. Naruto jumped back. Sasuke made the seals for the Chidori, and the attack appeared as normal. Then Sasuke moved his arm to the side. The lightning turned black and began to spark more erratically until the attack grew to twice the normal size. It's time for you to get a feel for my ominous Chidori. 2. Sasuke smirked. He also tore through the ground, chasing his opponent down. Kimimaro still managed to look at the attack with contempt. Bracken dance. All around him spires of bone sprang from the ground, growing high into the air. He vanished from view. Sasuke pulled back and began flapping his wings, raising into the air before he could be caged in. Naruto leapt from bone to bone, each spire branching to try to catch him. The bones stopped growing, and the two-leaf nin used chakra to stand on the bones. Kimimaro still couldn't be found. The two staggered and their various modifications began to recede into their bodies. It was all they could do to stay on their spires. So, you think he got caught in that attack? Naruto asked. Don't be foolish. You cannot defeat me. I fight for Lord Orochimaru. Kimimaro was behind him and he'd used another clematis flower. He went to strike when he froze in place and his dark eyes glazed over. He went limp and fell from the bones to the rocky floor below. The two-leaf nin looked to each other and began to smile before their eyes rolled back and they toppled like their opponent. Chapter 3. Shippuden begin. 4 blurs streaked across the tree line, heading for home. The blurs dropped to the forest floor, stopping on the pebbly bank of a river. Further down, out of their sight, was the site of a great battle. They could still see white, bony spires shooting towards the sky, taller than the treetops. Skidding to a stop over the pebbles, a white-haired man stood tall. He turned to his companions and nodded. The other adult of the group crinkled his visible eye in a smile. Well guys, we'll make camp here for the night, and we'll be back in the village tomorrow. He, being Kakashi of course, was talking to none other than our heroes, Naruto and Sasuke, the fourth member of their party being the Toad Sage Jiraiya. All four ninja dropped their packs and set up their camp. It had been a long year of hard training ever since the battle with Kimimaro, which was now called the Battle of the Bones. The new bone forest was called the Boneyard, and many a ninja was sent on a mission to the Boneyard to clear out bandits and rogues. Naruto and Sasuke had grown up quite a bit over the past year. Naruto had grown 3 or 4 inches, leaving the 14-year-old at a finally average height. His orange clothes had been shredded during his training, and he now wore a tight black t-shirt that showed off the muscles he'd gained. He wore a pair of cargo pants with many pockets for holding his various ninja tools. The pants were orange, but not the bright orange he'd worn before. They were a darker, burnt orange. The cuffs of the pants were stuffed into the black combat boots he wore. He wore a pair of fingerless gloves like Kakashi's over his hands. His blonde hair had grown out a little, and the bangs hung over his face at the absence of his headband, the plate of which was stitched into the left knee of his pants. Sasuke hadn't grown quite as much, but he and Naruto stood at the same height. Sasuke also had to have a new wardrobe. It was hard keeping up with Naruto's pace when it came to training, so his clothes were obliterated. He wore a tightly linked black mesh shirt under a white jacket that was zipped halfway. The inside and the hood was lined with dark blue fur. He wore a pair of cargo pants like Naruto's, but his were black, with the Uchiha fan repeating in a stripe down the side of the legs. He wore black wristbands under the jacket, and his cargo pants were tucked into his black ninja sandals. His hair had grown to be as long as it was in the Chunin exam finals, over a year before. The plate of his headband was stitched to the back of his jacket. A kusanagi was strapped horizontally to the belt loops of his cargo pants. The guard-less sword's hilt and sheath fit together seamlessly, both deep blue with a black stripe down the center. Kakashi and Jiraiya hadn't changed at all. Speaking of, the two older ninja called their pupils over to the campfire, where they had a supper of rations and a few rabbits captured by Kakashi. It was later in the night, and Naruto was on watch. He sat high in a tree, staring out into the forest. His eyes crossed the boneyard, and he couldn't help thinking back. It was just after Naruto had speared Kimimaro with his own bones. Naruto jumped back to land by Sasuke. Good job, Naruto. Let's end this bastard. Naruto formed another Rasengan. The attack rotated much more rapidly than before, and another tail began to bubble up behind him. The Rasengan began to shudder, like it was unstable. Rocks and dirt were thrown into the air as Naruto took off. Ultimate Rasengan. The super-powered attack crashed into the jagged stump of bone poking from Kimimaro's body. The bones splintered on impact and were driven further into the sickly ninja's body. Instead of his abdomen, there wasn't anything but a bloody, pulpy hole. Finish him off, Sasuke. Naruto jumped back. Sasuke made the seals for the Chidori, and the attack appeared as normal. Then Sasuke moved his arm to the side. The lightning turned black and began to spark more erratically until the attack grew to twice the normal size. It's time for you to get a feel for my ominous Chidori. Sasuke smirked. He also tore through the ground, chasing his opponent down. Kimimaro still managed to look at the attack with contempt. Bracken dance. All around him spires of bone sprang from the ground, growing high into the air. He vanished from view. Sasuke pulled back and began flapping his wings, raising into the air before he could be caged in. Naruto leapt from bone to bone, each spire branching to try to catch him. The bones stopped growing, and the two-leaf nin used chakra to stand on the bones. Kimimaro still couldn't be found. The two staggered and their various modifications began to recede into their bodies. It was all they could do to stay on their spires. So, you think he got caught in that attack? Naruto asked. Don't be foolish. You cannot defeat me. I fight for Lord Orochimaru. Kimimaro was behind him and he'd used another clematis flower. He went to strike when he froze in place and his dark eyes glazed over. He went limp and fell from the bones to the rocky floor below. The two-leaf nin looked to each other and began to smile before their eyes rolled back and they toppled like their opponent. Naruto awoke to rain pounding his face. He just remembered the fall, not knowing how he survived the drop. Sasuke laid near him, with the sound ninja not far away. He couldn't move, and Sasuke hadn't woke up yet. He heard a bark and Pakun, one of Kakashi's ninja hounds, landed beside him. Kakashi, I found him, he cried in his gruff voice. The silver-haired ninja landed soon after and noticed his student was awake. Naruto, I'm glad you both are okay. The copy ninja's eye crinkled in a smile as he started to pick Naruto up. When the orange-clad ninja was safely secured to his back, he made a few familiar hand signs. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Another Kakashi poofed into existence and picked Sasuke off the ground. Let's get you all back to the village, okay? The two Kakashi leapt back into the trees, carrying his two students back to safety. The next time Naruto woke up, he was in the hospital. Sasuke was in the bed beside him, and Sakura sat between them. The Pinkett looked up, startled. Naruto, you're awake. Lady Tsunade said it might be a few more days before either of you woke. Naruto smiled for a second, before his gaze clouded over once more. What about Lee, Shino, and Neji? How are they? Sakura looked down again, before she looked to the blonde boy and smiled. Lady Tsunade and the medics were able to heal everyone, but it took a lot of time. The Hokage used most of her chakra, and her genjutsu dropped for a while. She locked herself in her office and didn't come out till she got some chakra back. Naruto laughed. But are they okay? He asked, becoming serious again. Well, Lee ripped up his muscles using the hidden lotus, just like with Gaara. He healed, but he's been taken off missions until Lady Tsunade gives the okay. What about Shino? Shino was pierced by an arrow, but when the medics found him, his bugs were already healing him. It wasn't hard for him to be healed completely. Neji was stabbed under the ribs, and they almost got his heart. But he didn't need much healing either. Most of it came from you, Sasuke, and Lee. At that time the door opened, revealing Kakashi and Jiraiya. Sakura, could you give us a few minutes with Naruto and Sasuke? Kakashi asked. Of course, sensei. The pink-haired girl left. Sasuke, I know you heard everything. Open your eyes, Kakashi said. Sasuke sat up. Listen, Jiraiya began. I've gotten some intel that says Orochimaru switched bodies already. When they stared at him, he proceeded to explain Orochimaru's body-changing process. Now, according to my information, it'll be 3 years before Orochimaru can switch again. We're gonna use some of that time strengthening Sasuke up before he gets attacked again. Naruto stared. So that's it. You're just taking Sasuke off for 3 years. Without me. I thought you were my master pervy sage. Calm down, kid. Of course you're coming too. Kakashi as well. And it won't be 3 years. We'll be back in a year for the Chunin exams. I'm gonna work with you, and Kakashi will prepare Sasuke for his fight. Wait, why's Naruto need to train for Orochimaru? Sasuke asked. Naruto's not training for Orochimaru, Sasuke. He's training for the Akatsuki. Jiraiya informed. What do the Akatsuki have to do with this? Naruto wondered. They're on the move, capturing tailed beasts. They're after you. You remember Itachi and Kisame. How could he forget? Sasuke remembered too. There's 7 more members, just like them. Some are even stronger. We've got to prepare you. We'll be back in a year, Sakura. Then, we'll all take the Chunin exams again. We'll definitely make it this time. Naruto vowed. The 3 of them stood together, arm in arm, Sakura in the middle as they posed for a picture. Then, Naruto, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Sasuke turned away from the village hidden in the leaves, and walked out the gates. It's been a long time, Sakura. I can't wait for us all to meet up tomorrow. Sasuke and Naruto had burst into a sprint over ground as they neared the village gates, both trying to beat the other. Sasuke had a competitive smirk on his face, while Naruto's grin split his face and could be seen as a bright light by the Chunin at the gate. Both genin breezed past Izumo and Kotetsu, heading into Konoha. Hey, the spiky-haired Chunin started. Wasn't that Naruto and Sasuke? It's about time. Izumo answered. Sakura's been getting pretty restless. They shared a laugh as Jiraiya and Kakashi stepped up to fill out the entrance papers. The boys were neck and neck, trying to get to the center of the village before the other. The finish line was the top of the giant telephone pole in the center of the square. Both hit it at the same time and began to run up it. Gotta beat Sasuke. Naruto weaved his most useful signs. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A clone appeared in front of him, grabbed him by the arm, and slung him into the air. He landed on top of the pole just as Sasuke took the last step, leaping gracefully into the air. You cheated, you loser. Sasuke accused. However, his words weren't harsh, as the respect Naruto paid him had finally been returned in full over the course of their training. They were now truly best friends. His words were full of mirth, and Naruto knew he was joking. I just used what I had. The two 14-year-olds grinned out at the village they grew up in. Naruto stepped to the edge of the telephone pole and spread his arms wide. Hello world. Naruto Uzumaki has returned. Sasuke smirked, kicking his friend in the back and watching him topple off the side. He hit the ground in front of someone, startling her, before standing and yelling back at the Uchiha. Bastard. He turned around, scratching his head in embarrassment. Sorry about that. My bastard teammate up there knocked me off and, he really looked at the girl. She was about 2 inches shorter than him, wearing a deep red skirt, with black tights underneath, and knee-length boots. She wore a pink kimono shirt, tied together with a black obi around her waist. The shirt was imprinted with red thread, and pictured thousands of cherry blossoms blowing across the fabric. She twirled for him, showing the Sakura tree stitched to the back. The most startling thing was her pink hair that framed her face, but was tied up in the back. When she stood still again, he looked into her sparkling green eyes, and felt himself fall in love again. Hey Sakura. Sasuke dropped down beside his friends. Sakura. Even the Uchiha had to admit, Sakura looked stunning in her new battle garb. She tackled both of them in a hug as Kakashi and Jiraiya came up behind them. It's so great to see you guys, she exclaimed. She pulled back and examined both boys closely. You look stronger, she said. You too, they said together. Listen, while this catching up is interesting to watch, Master Jiraiya and I have to see the Hokage. However, I'm sure she'll want to see your progress, and I'm eager to see yours, Sakura. Meet me in Training Ground 7 in about an hour, Kakashi stated. Both sensei vanished in a swirl of leaves. It's been a long time since we've been here. Literally and figuratively, Sasuke commented. They'd been waiting for Kakashi for 3 hours. Naruto and Sasuke had taken it for granted that if they woke up with Kakashi every day, he couldn't be late for training. That changed pretty quick. If he shows up reading his porn, this'll be exactly like when we became a team. Sakura laughed. Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a quick glance. Actually, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei kicked that habit. She looked startled. Yeah, Sasuke added. We don't understand it, but once, during training, we had to camp with this all-kunoichi squad. Naruto took over there. I remember the first night the fire was bigger than we'd ever had before, and now every time you mention his books, he kinda huddles and cries a little. I don't cry, Kakashi said from the top of the fence the 3 genin reclined on. The 3 were so startled that they fell to their butts into the dirt. How about we go ahead and start? We have our audience. The Godime Hokage, her assistant Shizune, Jiraiya, and the other 2 genin teams that graduated with Naruto's group stood outside the fence. We'll have the same test we had on our first day as Team 7. The bell test. He twinkled 2 bells and strapped them to his belt. Now, remember, Kakashi began. If we don't come at you, like we're trying to kill you, we won't succeed. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura chimed in, mirroring their sensei during their first test as a team. Alright then, I guess it's time to, I've got this. Naruto cried. You with me, Sasuke? The Uchiha smirked, but made no move to join in as Naruto leapt into the air, coming down on his sensei with a kick that Kakashi dodged easily. I see you haven't learned as much as I thought you did, Naruto, Kakashi commented. Naruto whirled with a kunai that Kakashi grabbed, and put behind his head, just like the first time. I didn't say start. He vanished. Damn it, Naruto. I guess some things never change. Sakura laughed. Come on, Sakura. You know you missed me. Naruto, come on yourself. We've gotta find Kakashi, Sasuke pointed out. At least Naruto's faster than he used to be. Kakashi noticed. He watched from his hiding place and he saw the 3 of them go off in separate directions. This didn't work last time. He noted. I guess they've got to learn the hard way. He took off after Naruto. If Naruto remembered right, Kakashi came after him first. And the first lesson, if the bait was too easy, don't take it. And Naruto had become plenty smarter when it came to fighting during his training. He could set up a trap. When Kakashi came up on the blonde ninja, he was setting up his trap. He was hunched over, just finishing a cover of leaves over a net trap. He could barely see the ninja wire connected with his naked eye. It wasn't bad for his slowest student. But it wasn't good enough. Not bad, Naruto, but you could have done better. He threw a kunai and sliced the wires, making the trap useless. Or so he thought. What actually happened was that the wires traveled up, into the trees, and a net full of logs dropped from the canopy, aimed right at the copy ninja. Kakashi leapt back, but noticed a small cloud of smoke where Naruto had stood. Shadow Clone Sensei, remember what you told me. If the bait is too easy, don't fall for it. Rasengan. Naruto came from behind him, a swirling ball of death in his hand. It hit, but Naruto destroyed only a block of the wood he'd dropped. Damn it. Substitution. Naruto didn't know where his sensei disappeared to, but he began making his way back from where he came. Sasuke was next. He knew it. His lessons were maybe the toughest. Like Kakashi sensei was comparing him to someone the first time around. He still didn't know if he passed, but he was even more determined this time. Kakashi tested him on two things: ninjutsu and taijutsu. He was good at both, and Kakashi had seen all his training, but he hadn't been on the receiving end of one of Sasuke's attacks in a while. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. Sasuke whirled and saw the giant water jutsu coming straight at him. He'd only been able to use this jutsu right maybe twice. He figured it had a 50-50 shot of saving him. He made a few seals. Lightning style. Chidori current. Lightning crackled around him in a sphere-shaped shield. The water hit and began to steam. Sasuke leapt from the ground, and the current traveled through the water, leading back to Kakashi. The copy ninja dodged easily, coming up behind his student. Very good, perfecting the Chidori current. Your change in chakra form is coming along nicely. Sasuke's eyes transformed quicker than Kakashi thought possible, and the Uchiha was on him. He kicked his sensei in the jaw, sending him into the sky. Dancing leaf shadow. Sasuke was behind Kakashi. He whirled and caught the Jonin with a kick, spun back with a backhand, and spun again, hitting Kakashi with a punch. He was about to finish the lion's barrage, when bandages swirled around him and he saw Kakashi's Sharingan looking deep into his own. Sorry Sasuke, but this is about it for you. Primary Lotus. They began to spin rapidly, and Kakashi slammed Sasuke into the ground. And that's that. I'd think you, an elite Jonin, would see through a substitution. It was Kakashi's turn to whip around, only to be faced with Sasuke making rapid seals. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. The large ball of flames rushed at the Jonin sensei, who jumped out of the way. Sasuke was gone. Now, I guess I'll go back to the clearing and help Naruto set up for the rest of the plan. Sakura couldn't believe how well Naruto, Sasuke, and herself could be on the same wavelength after so much time, but they came up with a battle plan really quickly. Judging from the sounds of battle, she guessed it was about her time to shine. Ah, Sakura. She turned, seeing just what she expected to see from her sensei. Sasuke was crouched on the ground, clutching numerous wounds with multiple weapons sticking through him. I'm surprised you'd think that'd work on me twice. It's been a while, and you don't realize the training I've done. She put her hands in a simple seal. I'm not just some fangirl. I'm a real kunoichi. Release. Sasuke cleared from her sight, and she began focusing, looking for her sensei. Forward, backward, left, right, above. Well, the only place left is below. She leapt up, driving a chakra-laced fist into the ground. The earth pretty much exploded and Kakashi was thrown into the air, along with hundreds of pounds of rock and dirt. His eyes were wide, anime style, and he knew somewhere, Jiraiya was wincing, and Tsunade had a smirk on her face. However, Sakura, like her teammates, wasn't anywhere in sight. Sakura, how'd it go? Perfect. You guys really understand Kakashi-sensei. I can't take any credit for that. I worked with Pervy Sage the whole time. Sasuke's the one who came up with the plan. It was a good plan. But, I'm sorry to say I'm tired of the runaround. Kakashi said with an eye-crinkle smile. He advanced quickly. Strongest jutsu. Now, Sasuke called. He whipped out his kusanagi and began channeling energy. The blade was made of charka metal, and absorbed the chakra nature of whoever used it. Sasuke's sword crackled with electricity. Naruto summoned 4 shadow clones, who stood around his outstretched arm, shelling out chakra for an unknown jutsu. Sakura decided to start things off. Earth style. Rolling earth wave. She hit both palms against the ground, sending a shock through the dirt. The ground shot out from her hands, shaking and waving as its shockwaves moved toward Kakashi. His eye smile got bigger. Lightning blade. He thrust the powerful jutsu into the ground, the shock repelling the waves from Sakura's attack. Lightning cancels earth, he informed. I'm glad you found out your elemental affinity though. He was interrupted as Sasuke rushed him. Lightning style. Kusanagi. Kakashi made a few quick seals and started to spin. Wind style. Whirl barrier. Wind began to pick up and it stripped the lightning from Sasuke's blade. Kakashi kept spinning. His distorted voice gave more advice. Wind cancels lightning. Sasuke grinned. His blade erupted in flames. Fire style. Kusanagi. He slashed the winds, and the flames engulfed Kakashi. Wind also makes fire bigger, sensei. Sasuke said. He felt Kakashi grab his feet from below, and he was jerked into the ground. Earth style. Headhunter jutsu. Kakashi said as he crawled out of the ground. He walked over to Sasuke's head. You're good, but not good enough. Yet. The copy ninja relented. That's when he remembered Naruto. Wait, he's not trying that jutsu, is he? At the sudden realization, Kakashi turned, not seeing his blonde student. He heard high-pitched whirling, but he couldn't detect the source. Kakashi looked up, the source dawning on him. Wind style. Rasengan. The boy dropped from the sky, a green Rasengan with small shuriken blades whirling in his hand. His face was strained, and the jutsu pulsed unnaturally, like it was about to bust apart. The blades randomly extended and shrank, like they wanted to burst out of the spiraling ball. Jiraiya cried out from the sidelines. Naruto, you fool. You're nowhere near being able to use that jutsu. Just as the Sanin's voice rang out, Naruto lost all concentration, the jutsu blowing up in his face. He was blasted back, and Kakashi ran to him. Crouching down, he began to check the battered boy for any serious injuries. He felt a tug at his belt, saw Naruto's arm throw, something glint in the air, and heard jingling as Sasuke and Sakura grabbed. The blue-eyed boy looked into his sensei's eyes. We win. His head hit the ground. You idiot. Why did you use that jutsu? You've almost killed yourself dozens of times. Would the 4th Hokage want you to die doing something he himself said might be impossible? Jiraiya ranted at the boy in the hospital bed. But we won. Naruto pointed out. Some things really didn't change. That doesn't matter. I've warned you thousands of times not to use it. Enough. Naruto, until you've mastered the jutsu, you aren't to use it in combat. Tsunade ordered. He wasn't happy, but Naruto agreed. Now, you and Sasuke have some visitors. She led everyone out, and let 6 more people in. Yahoo! That was some of the most amazing fighting I've ever seen. Kiba remarked. He'd gotten taller as well, but not much else changed. His gray jacket was switched to a different one, with red, white, and black stripes across it. Akamaru was about the size of a German shepherd, and could by no means ride on the boy's head. Kiba, calm down. We're in a hospital. Hanada had let her blue hair grow out a little, and it went straight down to her shoulders. She wore tights and a newer jacket, seemingly modeled after Naruto's old one, the orange and blue switched with white and purple. She wore it much better than Naruto ever did. It's good to see you. Shino stated quietly. He still wore his gray coat, but it was completely unzipped, and the collar was down. Underneath he wore simple blue ninja clothes, like most Jonin wore. His hair was cut shorter, and his usually hidden face was seen for the first time by Naruto and Sasuke. The bug user had a rather handsome face, and was unaccustomed to walking through the village with people seeing it. He even had a few fangirls of his own now. Hey Sasuke, Ino said, already flirting. Then she looked to Naruto. Losing the orange was a good choice, Naruto. She winked at him, but of course, he missed it. Sakura glared at her flirty friend. Ino had gotten prettier. Her hair had been cut in the last Chunin exams, and she decided to keep it kinda short. She wore a purple oriental battle dress, with flower petals stitched up the right side. It was held together by a black obi, and under she wore black pants. Her hair had been taken up in buns, kinda like tentens, except a few strands poked out in random directions, and her bangs came down in her face, highlighting her pale blue eyes. Shikamaru didn't say anything, but he stared up at the ceiling, like he was counting the dots on the tiles. He wore a black jumpsuit under his Chunin vest. On his left shoulder was the plate from his headband, and on the other was his clan symbol, the blue circle, with a line through it. Choji had a pretty drastic change. He'd grown almost 6 inches, and the result was that he'd thinned out. His hair was free from his headband, which was around his neck. The height gain made it seem as though Choji lost his baby fat. His face was thinned, and he looked more muscular. His new philosophy: muscle weighs more than fat. The only problem was that his jutsu used more calories than they used to. He had to eat more, but he didn't get bigger. He wore black pants like Shikamaru's, but a red shirt, with silver armored plates. The chest plate had the clan symbol on it, the kanji for food in a red circle. Wow. A year really does a lot, doesn't it, Sasuke? You guys should see yourselves. Shikamaru said. You guys look different too. You fight different, that's for sure. Listen. Choji started. The real reason we came the Chunin exams are coming up again. They're being held in Iwagakure, and we wanted to know if you guys were going was. It was a week later, and Naruto was given a clean bill of health. They'd filled out all the necessary paperwork, they'd shouldered their packs, and they met Kakashi at the gates. They were headed to Iwagakure. The other 3 teams, Shikamaru's, Kiba's, and Neji's had already gone ahead, and they were about to follow. Guys, we've trained a year for this. We'll come back as Chunin. Believe it. Chapter 4. Iwagakure and the Chunin Exams Part 1. In the mountainous region of the Land of Earth, nestled between the peaks of a ring of the rocky peaks, was the village hidden in the stone. All the buildings were hewn from the rocks found in the mountains. The tallest building was a tall spire, with a pointed roof. The village also had the natural defense of being surrounded by the mountains. The only way into the village was a path through the rocks, only wide enough for 3 people at one time. 3 ninja were using that very path to get into the village. They were signified as stone nin by the emblem on their headbands. The 2 on the outside were supporting the one in the middle. The boy in the middle had deep blue eyes and brown hair, swept into spikes that flowed backward because of his headband. Said headband wasn't like most headbands. The cloth was orange, with a green starburst shape outlining the metal plate in the center. He wore a baggy, black, one-piece jumpsuit. The bottoms of the legs were purple, along with the edges of the pockets, the collar, the kunai case on his right leg, and the fingerless gloves on his hands. Over that, he wore a collarless shirt that matched his headband. The chest, sides, and the tops of the arms were orange, and the middle and the bottoms of the arms were green. His shinobi sandals were black. He was limp in the arms of his companions. The jacket had a large bloodstain on the front. Damn it, Uzaga. The first mission Roshi-sensei let us take by ourselves, and you go and overdo it. The speaker was the other boy, on the right. He was a redhead, but it fell free, not inhibited by a headband. It hung in his face, covering his dark eyes. His upper body was hidden by a black bubble coat, that somehow managed to make him look intimidating. Regular shinobi pants led to blue shinobi sandals. Jikai, now isn't the time. We've got to get him back into the village. The voice that spoke up was decidedly female. She had brown hair and blue eyes, like the first, but they were far from related. She wore her headband around her neck. A pair of black one-piece tights served as her regular clothes. The sleeves were long, but the tights ended at the knees. Over, she wore a black denim skirt, and a blue denim jacket. Her shinobi sandals were also blue. Shut up, Nicolette. Let's stop for a minute. The one in the middle, Uzaga, commanded. He was obviously the leader. The 3 of them stopped, and the lead ninja was placed gently on a flat rock. You know I hate being called that. The girl answered. Nickel, I thought you just told me this wasn't the time. Jikai commented. This started an argument between the 2 of them. Uzaga rolled his eyes. This was common. Will you 2 shut the hell up? The 2 looked to the strangely dressed ninja. Geez. After a few minutes of silence, Uzaga struggled back to his feet. Let's keep going. He held out his arms. With a sigh of exasperation, his 2 friends took up their places and the 3 began racing back toward the village. A single man stood at the gates waiting for them to get back. The man had a red beard and his hair was pulled into a spiky ponytail above his head. They were the same shade as Jikai's. He was wearing a large brown headpiece shaped like a three-pointed crown, with both his Iwagakure forehead protector and a ring. There was a prominent piece of black armor running across his cheeks and the bridge of his nose. He was dressed in a long-sleeved purple shirt and pants, with a mesh armor shirt underneath, and a brown chest piece. He also had a bag tied on his waist, most likely containing ninja tools. The three appeared at the gates, and his eyes widened at the bloodstain on his best student, and his nephew. I'd ask how the mission went, but I can see for myself. Calm down, uncle, Uzaga said. It's only a flesh wound. He grinned weakly. Damn it, I told you. On missions it's Roshi-sensei. He turned to Jikai. What happened? Father, it's the same as every other mission. He overexerted himself, and got himself injured. Roshi got a tick mark on his chin. Roshi-sensei. He corrected his son. Roshi-sensei, tell Uzaga he needs to go to the hospital. Nickel pleaded. No. The injured nin managed. I'm meant to be there. In the Tsuchikage's office, the wise Onoki, the fence-sitter and the Sandame Tsuchikage was finishing some paperwork when his door was opened. Roshi and his students walked in. Uzaga was being supported by Jikai and Nickel. Onoki stood. What's happened? The genin glared. I'm fine, Grandpa. Well, team, this is the Hidden Stone Village. Kakashi gestured grandly at the village. We've got to report to the Chunin exams area. It's in the hospital. Uzaga, I can't have you fighting until you can't anymore out on the battlefield. You're in training to be my successor, the Yondaime Tsuchikage. Gramps, if I can't give my all in my missions, I shouldn't even be on them. Uzaga argued. Calm down. Talk to the Tsuchikage with respect. Shut up, son. Onoki commanded Roshi. He turned back to his grandson. Damn it, boy, this was supposed to be a mission to test your leadership skills, and to prepare you for the Chunin exams. Now, I'm not sure if I should let you take them. I'm taking the exams, Grandpa. I won't be deterred, Uzaga vowed. There you go, Lord Uzaga. You're all patched up and ready to go. The doctor said. Jikai had brought his cousin a clean set of his trademarked clothing, and the three stone genin made their way down to the lobby, where the Chunin exams registration was taking place. The exams were getting ready to start. Line up, cried the first proctor. Naruto was sure the man had a name, but he hadn't listened when he said it. He was sizing up the competition, just like Jiraiya taught him. There were 3 stone nin that walked in almost before time was up. The one in the middle had a higher than average chakra signature. The old Naruto wouldn't have picked up on it, but that Naruto had gone through rigorous, intensive training to be able to recognize chakras. The boy was interesting. There were other teams too, of course. All 4-leaf genin teams were here, ready to take the exams again. There were, all in all, about 100 different teams present. After all, this was the first year in a long time that the villages of Stone, Mist, and Cloud had been allowed in the exams. Mist had 2 teams, but Cloud and Stone only had 1. Naruto was lined up in the front of his team. Sakura was behind him, with Sasuke taking up the rear. The team in front of them was Shikamaru's team, and behind them was Kiba's. Neji's team was further back in the line, right in front of the team from Stone. Now that Naruto thought, there was another dangerous chakra here. A familiar chakra. He flicked his eyes toward the door, and gaped. It was the red-headed sand ninja Gaara. However, Naruto couldn't worry about the homicidal sand nin now. They were all being told something important about the test. Alright, there are way too many teams here for us to deal with. So, one member of each team needs to step up here. We're going to do a little chakra test. This will test how much chakra you have. You have to have a certain amount to pass. The proctor said sadistically. Naruto looked to Sasuke, who nodded. The blonde stepped out of line, with 100 other genin. Choji, Shino, and Neji also stepped up for the leaf, all of them having high levels of chakra from being born into higher clans. From the sand it was obviously Gaara that approached the front. The redhead from the stone team also came forward. Alright, any teams that didn't pass the chakra test, leave. You aren't taking this test. Shockingly, every team but 8 left with a roar of grumbling and shuffling footsteps. There were a few teams that tried to fight the verdict, but they were forcibly reminded that they were up against Jonin. All four leaf teams managed to make it through, along with Gaara's team, the stone team, and the two mist teams. Now, back in line. Naruto was first in line this time, with all the other teams lined up behind Team 7. The proctor issued the next set of instructions. For this second part of the exams, we'll have a mini tournament. The chakra test was the first test of the exams, and now this will be the second. Only half of you will go on to the finals, a month from now. They were led into a bare room, with a fighting ring as the floor. There were balconies for the others to watch from. It was exactly like the room the teams were in last year, in Konoha. The computer screen was already revealed, showing the first two combatants. Uzaga Hikori versus San. The stone nin smirked. He was first. He leapt down and was greeted by his opponent. San was one of the mist nin. He was tall and thin, wearing a black bodysuit. A gray cloak was draped over his left shoulder, and his brown hair was swept over his ear on the right side of his head. Are both combatants ready? The proctor asked. Uzaga kept smirking as he gave a nod. The mist nin's face was expressionless, but he nodded too. The proctor disappeared, and a buzzer sounded. Hidden microphones blared a message. This will be an anything goes, no time limit fight. The match is over when one fighter concedes, or is killed. Begin. San moved quickly, making some seals, and biting his thumb. Summoning jutsu. He cried out, slamming his hands on the ground. In no time flat he was high in the air, riding a huge bird summon. The bird had a red mask over its beak and face, and the body was shaped like a manta ray. Now, wind style. Wind stream gust. The bird opened its mouth, and a stream of air shot out, making a sound like a sword cutting through the sky. Uzaga didn't dodge. He just lifted his hands in the tiger seal. Fire style. Inferno. He brought his hands apart like he was holding a ball between them. Flames crackled to life, filling the space. As the air touched the sphere, dark red flames rushed upwards, the air making a fuse, straight back to San and his summon. Adding fire to wind makes my fire more powerful. Uzaga declared as San barely made his bird dodge. Fine, San cried, making another seal. Black feathers sprouted from everywhere on the bird's body. They all shifted, till it looked like they were pointing straight at the stone nin. They were. At San's next sign they fired at once, making a black wall of death that flew straight at his opponent. Uzaga began a complex series of movements to begin dodging, but there were too many. I need a defensive jutsu. He thought. He made the monkey seal. Wind style. Updraft. He pointed his hands down. Wind burst from his open hands, shooting him high into the air above the feathers. He looked visibly fatigued by using two natures so closely in conjunction. He kept the jutsu going for as long as he could, charging at the bird. Eat him, San commanded. Small jet ports opened up on the bird's body, and it shot forward, much faster than it had been before. Its beak snapped open under the mask. At the last possible second, Uzaga angled his palms down toward the floor. He was launched a few feet higher, over the bird's beak. He landed, canceling the jutsu, and charged forward. San didn't move for some reason. It became apparent as the stone nin landed a powerful left-handed punch, knocking San from his perch. As soon as it came out of contact with its summoner, the bird burst apart into smoke. Both ninja dropped toward the ground. Uzaga opened his hands again, slowing his fall to land on his feet while San crashed into the ground with a crunch. Uzaga panted hard, but set his hands in the snake seal. Earth style. His voice was shaky, but he completed the jutsu. The assembled audience gaped at the attempt of using a third nature. Burial jutsu. He stomped the ground. Grave. The heavy tiles underneath San pulled up like they were on hinges, sending him into the air. When he landed he fell into a hole where the dirt had disappeared. Uzaga slid his foot across the ground, stumbling a little. Cover, he cried, recovering his balance. Sweat glistened across his face as he struggled to complete the three-part jutsu. The tiles dropped back down, covering the hole. The stone nin finally dropped his hands from the snake seal. Rest in peace, San of the Mist. He snapped his fingers, and the two tiles shuddered violently. He'd made all the earth that disappeared during the grave part of the jutsu cover the mist nin, burying him alive and crushing his body. The proctor jumped back to the floor. Due to the death of San, the winner is Uzaga Hikori. The fighter smirked again before his eyes rolled up in his head and he dropped to the floor. The medics were getting ready to collect him when Nickel grabbed him, telling the guards he'd be okay after a little rest. On the balcony, Naruto looked on in amazement as the match finished. That stone nin was powerful, just like he'd thought. That burial jutsu was eerily similar to Gaara's sand burial. But there was no time to dwell on that. The next names were about to be shown. Kiba Inuzuka versus Konkuro. Kiba had won, not even having to put up much of a fight. Kankuro's two puppets, the crow, and the newly acquired black ant were no match for Kiba and Akamaru's whirling claws and fangs. The puppets were shredded, and the puppeteer was distraught. The next names were put up. Ino Yamanaka versus Kajika. Kajika won, proving to be another powerful opponent with his advanced use of the water style. He hammered Ino with jutsu after jutsu, not ceasing, till he almost killed her. She forfeited, but he was about to go for the kill. He almost sank his shark-like teeth into her neck when Asuma came to the rescue. He leapt in the way, and got a bite on the shoulder as a reward. He punched Kajika in the face, knocking the boy away, and told Ino he was proud of how far she'd come in her training. The next names were revealed. Naruto Uzumaki versus Choji. Akamichi. Naruto and Choji jumped to the floor and stood opposite each other. Both were excited for their turn to fight. The proctor jumped out of the ring again, and Choji began to speak to his opponent. I hope you do well, Naruto. I'm not the weakest link in the Rookie 12 anymore. I've gotten stronger. You'll have to come at me with everything, Choji declared as the proctor started the match. Expansion Jutsu. Human Boulder. Choji swelled, tucking his head and his limbs into his body. He took off, the attack much faster than it used to be. Naruto leapt up, thinking to fly over it, but Choji bounced and shrank till he was the size of a basketball. His speed and force were increased exponentially, and he slammed into Naruto's chest. The blonde ninja hit the floor, breathless. Choji transformed back to normal. I discovered that after I expanded my body, I could control how big my boulder form is. I also found out that my abilities change depending on how big I am. Naruto stood, managing to look impressed despite the gaping eyes and the wheezing. That's good, Choji. Learning new ways to use your moves is a part of adapting to battle. That's what Pervy Sage taught me. Let me show you how I use that information. He made 2 clones. The clones began shelling out chakra into his hands, and 2 Rasengan formed. Then the clones lifted them from the original, and charged at Choji. That's not much different, Choji cried as he began dodging. That's just the distraction. Another clone appeared and started giving chakra for another Rasengan. The original placed his other hand on the sphere of chakra and it started to expand. The clone held the chakra steady as the 2 began to run. Prepare for this. Giant Rasengan. Choji saw the attack coming, and stopped. Both clones started after him from the sides as Choji started to channel his chakra. Just as the 2 clones got close, the Akamichi exploded with power, and the clones just exploded. The pair of Rasengan began to disperse, and the chakra all flowed to Choji, where a huge pair of chakra wings had formed. I've prepared, Choji said with a smirk. He caught the giant Rasengan with his left hand, stopping Naruto in his tracks. The attack started to break up, the chakra dispersing into the air and being drawn into Choji's wings, making them bigger. Most of the chakra, however, focused itself onto his right hand. Cho Bomber. One, with him gripping Naruto's hand, preventing escape, Choji drove his chakra-covered fist into Naruto's face, blowing him back. Naruto hit the wall, and some rubble dropped onto him. A quick burst of red chakra and Naruto was back on his feet, without so much as a bruise on his face. Choji gripped his chest in pain. Ino looked down in shock. Choji, are you alright? The brown-haired boy shook it off, and got ready to continue the fight. He made a few hand seals and the chakra receded into his body. Partial expansion jutsu. Arms. His arms stretched and grew until he could slap Naruto around. The blonde boy hit the walls, the ceiling, and everywhere else until finally Choji let the other leaf nin fall. Naruto crawled back up. Give up, Naruto. You're taking a beating. Naruto's eyes opened wider, slitted and red. Give up. 6 clones burst into existence. On me giving up. 3 Rasengan toting Naruto's dashed in. Choji got ready, but 3 more clones slid up behind him. Ru. 2. Each kicked, sending the Akamichi into the air. He made a few more seals, but was cut off before he got the chance. The 3 with the Rasengan struck. Ra. Sen. Gone. The 3-week spiral spheres spun Choji higher into the air. Naruto leapt up, spun, and dropped his heel on Choji's stomach. Barrage. Naruto had curbed his blows, but he still hit him hard enough to end the fight there. Due to Choji Akamichi being knocked out, the winner is Naruto Uzumaki. Neji Hyuga vs Tamari. The match started off well for Tamari. Neji couldn't get close. After 10 minutes of trying and failing, he took a new approach. He used his improved version of the 8 trigrams palm rotation, and it finished the battle for him. Sasuke Uchiha vs Ni. Sasuke stepped down to meet his opponent. She didn't look like any genin he'd ever seen before. Ni had long brown hair that spiraled down past her hips. She wore a red bodysuit that showed off a lot of her pale skin, and that didn't actually cover much. She carried a whip, and Sasuke was a little wary of how well she could use it. She had 3 purple stripes on her cheek. Time to begin, the proctor decided. Ni wasted no time, snapping her whip and hoping to ensnare the Uchiha. Sasuke dodged by leaping to the side, but she snapped the leather weapon again, catching his ankle. "You're pretty cute, for a leaf nin." She laughed before leaning in and whispering to him. "I think I'll keep you instead of letting Lord Orochimaru having you." Sasuke's eyes widened and automatically slid into the Sharingan. "I don't see that happening," he cried, forming some rapid seals. Lightning style. Chidori current. The sparks burst to life all across his body, traveled up through the whip, and coursed through Ni's body, throwing her back. Sasuke untangled the sizzling whip from his ankle and brandished it with a look of disgust. "Bitch." Before he could turn to see if she was getting back up, he was swarmed by a pack of summoned dogs. They had dark blue fur, and looked more like wolves than dogs. But the really scary attribute was the white, skeletal armor and the projectile launchers on their shoulders. There were 6 of them. Sasuke managed to leap back, but the lead wolf, about twice as large as the others, howled a call that made the spectators cringe, and all 5 other dogs launched themselves. Sasuke threw down the whip, grabbed his kusanagi, and started dodging while he channeled chakra. The dogs were almost upon him when he was finally ready. Fire style. Kusanagi. The blade lit up in bright crackling flames, and Sasuke started slashing out at the wolves as they got close. The wolves were fast, and Sasuke only managed to take out 2 of them, leaving 4 including the leader. Sasuke didn't have enough chakra to keep the fire style Kusanagi going indefinitely, so he cancelled the jutsu, and started weaving more signs. Summoning jutsu. 8 ninja hounds. Smoke burst out all over him, and suddenly he was standing in the middle of Kakashi's summons. Pakun looked up at him. "Wadaya needs Sasuke." The Uchiha nodded in the direction of the wolves, who had regrouped around the leader. "We've got this," the small pug declared as all 8 leapt into action, each wolf going against 2 ninja hounds. It wasn't long before all the wolves were gone, except the leader. He crouched down and shot the projectiles from his shoulder, taking Pakun and Bull out of the fight. "Everyone, get him," another of the dogs cried. All 6 of them rushed the much bigger dog. The dog couldn't keep up with all 6, and soon it dispersed. "Well, if that's all you needed," one dog began. Summoning jutsu. Lion turtle. A bigger explosion of smoke hid Ni. When the smoke cleared, a giant lion stood in Ni's place. It had an orange mask for a face, and a green mane spread out behind it. Its body was brown, but it was covered in the same bony white armor as the dogs were. The top piece of armor was spiked, like an offensive turtle shell. Ni rose out of the lion's forehead from the waist up. "Defeat me now," the mist nin cried. The lion roared and the ninja hounds poofed away, leaving Sasuke alone and looking worried for the first time during the whole fight. Ni had managed to pick up her whip, and used his moment of confusion to send it flying at him once more. It wrapped around his wrists, binding them together. Sasuke was still able to make some seals, and he grabbed onto the whip between his hands. Fire style. Dragon fire jutsu. He unleashed the flames from his mouth and they traveled up the whip, destroying it in the process. The flames hit her and she started to scream. The lion started moving, but it was very slow. Those flames had washed over the turtle's shell, cracking it and leaving it brittle. Sasuke made his move. He leapt up and began a series of attacks. He jumped back and ran forward again, leaping to the side of the beast and striking out with his foot. Vertical lion's barrage. His foot connected solidly with Ni's exposed face, and there was a sickening crack as her neck snapped. The lion turtle disappeared. Winner. Sasuke Uchiha. Chapter 5. Iwagakure and the Chunin Exams Part 2. Sakura Haruno vs Hanada Hyuga. The two kunoichi met on the floor. Neither looked happy to be fighting another leaf nin. Sakura spoke up first. Good luck, Hanada. The Hyuga looked startled before slipping into her stance. Thank you, Sakura. The battle began. Cha. Sakura ran at the Hyuga heiress, her hands alight with chakra. Hanada was about to make an attack as well, but her head felt funny. The blossoms on Sakura's kimono shirt were pulling from the fabric, creating a smokescreen. Normally, Hanada could see through such a thing, but the sickly sweet scent of the cherry blossoms dulled her senses, and her normally sharp Byakugan wasn't working. Sakura's chakra-powered punch knocked the Hyuga to the ground. This is my special genjutsu. I've been working on it for some time. It uses cherry blossoms to distract my opponent. By using chakra I can enhance the attributes of the blossoms to affect other senses. Hanada could feel the truth in Sakura's words. She was unable to defend against the last attack, and she couldn't use her eyes. She stood back up. Why your genjutsu can't affect my ears, Sakura? Hanada declared. Sakura rushed in again, about to attack, when the blue-haired Hyuga made her move. One simple seal and her eyes narrowed in concentration. 8 trigrams palms rotation. She spun round, expelling energy from her chakra points. The spinning barrier repelled Sakura, sending her flying back from the Hyuga. Sakura crashed into the wall. Is that how you plan on beating me? Sakura asked as she picked herself off the ground. She brushed stone chips from her shirt. Listening for me and knocking me away whenever I get close. She made another seal. I'll get your ears too then. Earth style. Shattered ground. She punched the ground and the large, heavy tiles began to crack and shatter. Hanada was thrown into the air, and Sakura made quick use of the opening. She hit Hanada with another punch, using an ability she learned from Tsunade. She used an electrical impulse to boost the nerves in Hanada's ears, making them super sharp. Not in a good way. Hanada hit the ground, pieces of tile dropping all around her. Even the smallest pieces sounded like cannonballs peppering the floor beside her. Now you'll never be able to hear me coming. Sakura boasted. Her voice pounded Hanada's eardrums relentlessly. She tried to rise, but even the sounds of her sandals scraping against the rubble was near unbearable. She slid back to the floor. Hanada, I didn't get you that bad, did I? Sakura came up, footsteps echoing in the Hyuga girl's head. She put a hand on Hanada's shoulder. Do you want to give up? Sakura was so close that even those whispered words sent a burst of static across her vision. In her mind's eye, the only eye working right at the moment, she saw the blonde object of her affections. She remembered his last words in his fight against Choji. Her own words making her cringe, she whispered back, without a stutter, give up on me giving up. She spun from her seat, sending up the dome of chakra her clan was famous for. The sounds of the chakra whirling around her made her sicker and sicker, until she passed out. The chakra stopped flowing. She could only hope Sakura had been knocked out too. The proctor was about to call the match when Sakura crawled up to her knees, shifting rubble off of her. She saw Hanada laid out on the floor and she looked at the proctor. Sakura Haruno wins. Rock Lee vs Same, Same. Same was one of Kajika's teammates. He was a burly mist nin, wearing the same scale-patterned shirt as Kajika. His shark mask was dark blue, and he had a scarf covering the lower part of his face. He had a large black shuriken strapped to his back. The mist nin was much too slow and Lee ran circles around him. He was defeated without much effort. Before being carried off the floor on a stretcher, he sent a knowing look up at Kajika on the balcony. Nicolette I vs Ichi. The stone kunoichi was strong. There was no doubt about that. But Ichi was determined. He had 2 losses on his team to make up for, and he fought tooth and nail against the petite girl. She wasn't doing well. Her teammate, Uzaga, who defeated Ichi's twin San, woke up in the middle of the fight and watched her be beaten. He showed no emotion throughout, but when she was defeated he flashed down and picked her up gingerly before taking her to the medics himself. Ichi sent an unseen smirk to Kajika. Gaara vs Tenten. In the battle with the sand-wielding demon, Tenten really stood no chance. Lee and Naruto were the only ninja to ever get through his absolute defense, and even though Tenten was stronger than she'd been a year ago, she wasn't near the level of her fellow Leaf Nin. Tenten lost. Shikamaru Nara vs Piranha. Piranha was the last member of Team Kajika to fight. She wore the same scale print shirt as her teammates. She had a purple scarf that covered the lower part of her face. Her brown hair was swept back in a ponytail that fanned out wide behind her head. Shikamaru grumbled at his luck of fighting a girl for 2 years in a row. He unzipped his father's old Chunin vest and tossed it to Asuma before dropping down to the floor. Utilizing a few new shadow jutsu, the Nara heir defeated Piranha without much trouble at all. He hadn't even really broken a sweat. Final match. Jikai Hikori vs Shino Aburame. The last match started well for Shino. He made all the right moves, being cautious because of not knowing what his opponent could do. The Stone Nin was almost as cool and level-headed in battle as he was. Jikai made no moves without thinking, and it took a lot of tactics to box the redhead in. When that happened, Shino gave Jikai a very simple choice. Give up, or have the bugs set upon him. Jikai's answer was to use a fire jutsu to burn away at the insects on all sides. Shino called his remaining bugs back to him, and was forced to forfeit himself. Alright, the 12 of you that won, line up here. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Neji, Lee, Kiba, Shikamaru, Gaara, Uzaga, Jikai, Kajika, and Ichi stood together in front of the proctor. We're gonna draw names for your opponents in the next round. The proctor informed. Your names have all been written on scraps of paper. You each draw one, and that's your opponent. No objections. You'll meet here a month from now, and battle under the watchful eyes of your village leaders and spectators from the other villages. There were nerves all around, except for the 2 on the end, who looked smug. The names were passed and the lineup was as follows: Sasuke Uchiha vs Kiba Inuzuka. Shikamaru Nara vs Uzaga Hikori. Sakura Haruno vs Ichi. Kajika vs Neji Hyuga. Naruto Uzumaki vs Rock Lee. Jikai Hikori vs Gaara. After picking names, the Tsuchikage came down to the floor. He'd been watching. I'd like to take this time to congratulate the winners. Let me tell you. In 1 month, you'll be showing off your skills for dignitaries from the other hidden villages, and for your own village. These exams were started after the wars ended. They were to be meant as a substitute. You're going to be showing your battle skills, and the skills of your village, to the world. With Sasuke and Kakashi, we've got a lot of training to do. Sasuke, Kakashi declared. You're fighting Kiba in the next round. His combo jutsu with Akamaru are dangerous. But I have a plan. You've already mastered summoning the 8 ninja hounds. Now, we're going to pair you up with your own. After that, we'll start training with combo attacks. Sasuke nodded. Let's do this. With Naruto and Jiraiya, you're facing Lee. Jiraiya said. Naruto nodded in assent. Lee excels at speed and taijutsu. Normally for a taijutsu user, most experienced ninja would suggest genjutsu. However, neither of us have a talent for that. We're going to work on speed. From those tree climbing and water walking exercises, you already know how to channel chakra to a part of your body. What I'm about to show you is really just taking it a step farther. With Sakura and Tsunade, no one really saw what that Ichi guy can do. How do I prepare for it, my lady? Sakura asked. We just have to prepare for every possible outcome. What we'll do first is sharpen your medical ninjutsu. Sakura saluted. Milady. With Jikai and Roshi, Jikai, I've been training you for some time to be able to control what you have inside you. Roshi began. I know, father. I've also trained you to recognize others of your kind. Did you notice? Jikai pondered for a moment. The redhead that fought with sand, and the blonde boy with the clones. Roshi nodded approvingly. Can you tell by the chakra? Who were they? Roshi pressured. Jikai looked at his father, exasperated. The only thing I can tell is that the sand nin can't be higher than 2 tails, and the leaf nin isn't less than 7. Roshi looked troubled. It's a start. We're going to work on your control. With Uzaga and the Tsuchikage, I dunno about this, Gramps. It was all I could do to use all 3 natures in that fight. I passed out. I'm not ready for the dust style. Nonsense. You'll do fine. You know why? Because you're my grandson. The Tsuchikage boasted. Gramps, that has nothing to do with this. The dust style isn't a Kekkei Genkei. You learned it from Lord Mew. Onoki glared at his apprentice. You can do this, Uzaga. I believe in you. The village's future rests with you. No pressure, right? The colorful stone nin sweat dropped. With Gaara was contemplating. It had been a long time since he'd had a psychotic episode, and it was all thanks to Naruto Uzumaki. He wasn't sure how he'd react to seeing the blonde leaf nin, but he was overtaken by an urge to fight the boy. Not like his urges from before. More like an urge to show the Uzumaki how far he'd progressed. Konkuro, he called. The puppeteer walked into the room. He'd been working on his puppets, trying to put them back together. His war paint had been washed off, and his hands were scratched and covered in splinters. What's up, Gaara? The paint-wearing nin was much more comfortable around his baby brother. Now that Gaara wasn't trying to kill anyone within 10 feet of him every 5 minutes, they were actually getting along really well. Find Tamari and help me train. Konkuro smirked. Gaara still hadn't figured out the difference between a request and a demand, but he was making progress. Sure bro. With Lee and Guy, let's go Lee. Let your youth shine. Guy called out. The two of them were currently standing on their hands in the path leading to the village. They were leaping from rock to rock. Guy-sensei, if I cannot make it from the beginning of this path to the end 50 times, I will punch the cliff 100 times. If I cannot punch the cliff 100 times, I will. One of Lee's hands slipped and he crashed his head into the rocks. He popped up quickly, looking only a little dazed. It's all right Lee. I will attack the cliffs with you. With Neji and Hanada. Thank you for training with me Lady Hanada. Neji bowed. Hanada looked mortified. And Neji, you don't have to bow to me. Neji looked up and nodded. Yes Lady Hanada. Let's start. The two squared off, each in the stance of the Hyuga clan, but both in their own unique stance. Neji crouched low to the ground, with Hanada standing, arms out. Tenten, be our referee. Neji asked. The weapon-wielding girl nodded and leapt to her feet. Begin. Both Hyuga moved in with the gentle fist. With Kiba and Shino, thanks for agreeing to help with our training Shino. Kiba remarked. Akamaru barked in agreement. It's no problem. The more quiet boy said. That's not true Shino. You could be trying to breed your bugs back to stock. It's fine. Shino said. They are already breeding. I should have all my bugs back within the week. Kiba looked puzzled. Shino, you lost thousands of bugs. You're telling me you can get all of them bred back in a week, without doing anything? Shino nodded. Bugs are creepy. With Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji, come on Shikamaru. You've gotta train. You face that stone nin in the first round. You saw how strong he was. He can use 3 chakra natures. Ino was trying to motivate her lazy shadow-wielding teammate that he needed to prepare for the exams. What she'd yet to realize was that yelling wasn't a good motivator where Shikamaru was concerned. Ino, I don't need to train. I need you to quit screaming at me. I get enough of that from my mom. Shikamaru complained. He's right Ino. Yelling doesn't solve anything. Choji piped up. Shut up Choji. Ino commanded. She turned back to Shikamaru. You have to train because that Uzaga guy is strong. You know, I think Asuma-sensei said he's the Tsuchikage's grandson. You can't go up against someone like that without preparing. Calm down Ino. It was a real drag, but before we left the village, my dad taught me a couple of new shadow jutsu. With Ichi and Kajika, and that's what happened Lord Orochimaru. He killed me without any trouble. Without thinking, Ichi reported. Kajika had used a jutsu to transform a puddle of water he poured from his canteen into a looking glass. Both ninja were speaking directly to their lord. They had changed headbands from mist to sound. Very good. Sasuke's coming along nicely. The snake Sanin's voice hissed with laughter. His face was in shadow. Now, let's go over the plan one more time. The two, Mist, Nin shared a smirk as they recounted their part of the plan to their master. In the Sound Village, Lord Orochimaru, are you sure this is wise? Attacking during the Chunin exams for the 2nd year in a row. Kabuto would follow Orochimaru with everything he had, but he had to admit, this was nearing madness. Don't worry Kabuto. This is all a part of the plan to capture Sasuke. The man's snake eyes glimmered in the shadow while his fangs gleamed in a deadly smirk. I don't doubt that Kajika and Ichi will fail, but they will open the opportunity for me to move in. 1 month later the same proctor from the preliminary fights stood before the 12 genin that were about to participate in the fights to come. The stands were steadily filling with spectators, and the 3 kage from the participating hidden villages were also in attendance. The old man Tsuchikage, the slightly younger Hokage, and the extremely young Mizukage, Yagura. Onoki stepped forward to speak. Spectators, welcome to Iwagakure for the annual Chunin exams. I hope your journeys find you well, and that you're ready to watch these 12 genin fight for the honor of their villages. The Tsuchikage stepped back and took his seat between the other two kage. Yagura, I'm glad to see you here. I was of the impression you were getting sicker. You don't need me to look you over, do you? Tsunade asked. The boyish kage shook his head. No thank you, Princess Tsunade. I'm feeling much better. Yagura smirked, crinkling his pink eyes and making the scar stretched over his face quiver. Tsunade felt troubled. She didn't know what, but she felt something amiss. However, she had no reason to suspect Yagura. She'd never met him. It's time for the first match. The proctor called. Sasuke Uchiha and Kiba Inuzuka stepped forward. Everyone else, make your way to the competitors' box. Chapter 6. Finals, first round. Sasuke Uchiha vs Kiba Inuzuka. Let's go Akamaru. The shepherd-sized dog barked loudly. Sasuke grinned. Every time I see you two, I get surprised at how big Akamaru gets. Both looked to the proctor, who nodded and vanished. The crowd began to cheer and jeer, yelling for their favorite to win. Sasuke made the first move, biting his thumb before making hand seals. Summoning jutsu. When the smoke cleared, one of Kakashi's hounds was sitting at Sasuke's side. He was tan-colored, with brown highlights on his long ears and legs. He had a black kanji on his forehead. It was the kanji for shinobi. He wore the standard outfit of Kakashi's ninja hounds, which was a blue vest with a Konoha forehead protector around his neck. The symbol on the back of the vest had been changed from Kakashi's symbol to the Uchiha crest. So, you've got a nin dog too. That's interesting. But you don't have the teamwork that me and Akamaru do. He barked in agreement. Sasuke smirked. Let's show them our teamwork, Biscuit. The smaller dog smirked too. Sounds like a plan. Kiba crouched down. All fours jutsu. His eyes slitted even further, his nails became claws, and his incisors sharpened into fangs. He laughed. Let's end this quick, Akamaru. He began running at Sasuke, speed far surpassing that of the Uchiha. Ha! Sasuke blinked hard. Sharingan. The two decided to begin without their dogs, each matching the other step for step. After a few seconds of a pure speed battle, with neither landing any hits, Kiba jumped back before jumping forward again. Tunneling Fang. He cried, spinning like a drill. Sasuke leapt deftly over the attack, but Kiba circled back. Sasuke made a few rapid seals. Lightning style. Chidori current. Sparks burst out across his body, repelling Kiba as he got close. The other leaf nin hit the dirt of the arena. He got back to his feet, albeit a little slower from the shock to his system. That was pretty good, Kiba declared. He dug a food pill out of his pouch, throwing it to Akamaru. But it's time to get to the main event. Akamaru's fur turned red, and he leapt to Kiba's side. Akamaru, man-beast clone. After a burst of smoke, two identically animalistic Kibas stood side by side. They grinned ferally. Think you can keep up with me? They asked together. They began to weave signs together. Whirlwind Wolf Fang. They both whirled, throwing their claws out. As they came around, they made slashing motions, sending blades of wind at Sasuke. The Sharingan user smiled. If that's the only new thing you're bringing to the table, this won't end well for you. He made some signs of his own, ending in the tiger seal. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. The huge ball of flames washed over the wind claws, continuing towards Kiba and Akamaru. The two brought their hands up together, sort of like a double high five. They clasped them together for a second before running at the fireball. They jumped and began to spin. Fang over fang. They cut through the fire easily, even attracting some with their whirling bodies. They became flaming drills of power, aimed at Sasuke. Now, Biscuit. The smaller dog put his paws together in what must have been a seal. Water style. Water wall. He opened his mouth and water gushed out, forming an orb-shaped barrier around them. Ha! That won't stop us. The two Kiba cried in tandem. They kept advancing, and Sasuke weaved more signs. Lightning style. Kusanagi. He ripped his sword from the sheath and it began to crackle with electricity. He stabbed the sword into the side of the water jutsu just as Kiba and Akamaru made contact. The whole area exploded into smoke, and Kiba and Akamaru were thrown clear. Sasuke and Biscuit were nowhere in sight, but two shredded logs were piled around Sasuke's Kusanagi that was stabbed into the ground in the middle of the arena. Damn it! Substitution. Kiba thought. He looked to Akamaru. We can smell them though. The Kiba clone nodded, then grinned as he picked up the scent. They whirled and started the fang over fang again. Ready, Biscuit? Sasuke asked lowly. The nin dog nodded. I'm ready when you are. The two made seals together, much like Kiba and Akamaru had before. They jumped out of the trees, where they were hiding, and began their jutsu. Fire style. Sasuke began. Water style. Biscuit echoed. Combination jutsu. Sasuke threw out a hand, grabbing the dog's outstretched paw. Chakra missed. They both opened their mouths, releasing a dense fog that quickly covered the field. Yells from the crowd could be heard, because of their now impaired vision. That isn't gonna work against us, Kiba announced. He lifted his nose to the air, and began using his sharp senses. However, he couldn't smell anything. He couldn't see Akamaru either. Idiot, didn't you hear us? Chakra missed. You can't smell through it. Neji wouldn't be able to see through it. You can't find us, Sasuke taunted. Kiba smirked. We can fix that, Akamaru. The two of them used the whirlwind wolf fang to blow the fog away, but Sasuke and Biscuit were nowhere to be found. Where are they? Kiba demanded. He felt the ground shift, and he was jerked down, covered up to his neck in the dirt. After a yelp, he knew Akamaru had been gotten too. Biscuit popped out of the ground in front of him. Earth style. Headhunter jutsu. He said. Sasuke appeared, seemingly from nowhere. Ninja art. Camouflage. They examined the Kiba in front of them. I think you're the real Kiba, Sasuke decided. What do you think, Biscuit? The dog nodded. It's likely. They trotted over to Akamaru. They did something Kiba didn't see, and he heard the transformation end. Well, what do you know? I was right, Sasuke smirked. He strolled back into Kiba's line of sight, Biscuit following obediently. I'd suggest you give up, Kiba. You can't fool my eyes with your parlor tricks, and you can't touch me with your combinations. I'm too smart and too fast. Kiba smirked back. Go Akamaru. When the transformation ended, Akamaru's hole wasn't as tight as before. He had scrambled out. Dynamic marking. The white dog jumped up, spinning. Sasuke and Biscuit jerked around just in time to get their fronts splattered with dog urine. Son of a bitch, Sasuke exclaimed. His white jacket was now a putrid yellow color. Kiba laughed uproariously, as did a lot of the audience. But Biscuit was calm. Don't worry about it, Sasuke. He made a seal. Water style. Dampening jutsu. He shook out his fur, getting water all over the two of them, washing the urine away. Nice try, but that won't wash away the smell. Kiba started to strain at the ground, holding him captive. Tunneling fang. He started to spin and burst up from the ground. He landed next to Akamaru. Nowhere to run, he declared. He made a hand seal before laying a hand on Akamaru's head. Combination jutsu. Man-beast fireburst. Both opened their mouths and released a blast of fire similar to a blast from the phoenix flower jutsu. Sasuke and Biscuit had to move apart to avoid, leaving Kiba and Akamaru to pick them off. Kiba moved in on Sasuke with a kunai. The Uchiha moved back, systematically drawing near his kusanagi. Kiba saw this, and used the tunneling fang to get behind him. He lashed out with the kunai, forcing Sasuke to abandon his quest for his sword. Kiba plucked it from the ground and threw it into the trees. Ah, ah, ah. Kiba smirked, wagging a finger at Sasuke. None of that. He moved in with taijutsu, using his higher speed to try to overwhelm the Sharingan user. He slashed his claws at the Uchiha, who sucked in his breath, throwing himself backwards. He barely dodged the thorny fingernails. I love the smell of prey on the ropes, don't you, Akamaru? There was a deep yip in response, and Sasuke hazarded a hook at his partner. Biscuit was bleeding from a scratch over his left eye. The eye was closed, keeping the blood from seeping into it. He had 3 small scratches on his muzzle that had already stopped bleeding, and bite marks around one leg. Akamaru had a small nick in his ear, and favored one paw, keeping it gingerly off the ground. Akamaru still looked better than Biscuit. Biscuit, are you okay? The dog nodded, sending droplets of blood into the dirt. Kiba laughed. Akamaru drew first blood. Sasuke glared at him before sliding up both sleeves. There was an identical tattoo on each wrist, a sealing tattoo. He clapped his hands onto the wrists, and drew shuriken from them with a puff of smoke. Shuriken jutsu. He jumped back, letting the shuriken fly at Kiba. He had just leapt to the side when they scattered, being manipulated by ninja wire attached around Sasuke's wrists. The Uchiha stopped beside his partner while Akamaru went to assist his. Not bad, Sasuke, Kiba said, dodging all the shuriken. Sealing tattoos on your wrists. That's a pretty good idea. He looked to Akamaru. But, I'm getting tired of this fight. He made a few seals and jumped high up into the air, his nin dog following. Inuzuka style. Man-beast combination transformation. Two-headed wolf. There was a blast of smoke, and a deep, powerful growling that echoed with two voices. The smoke began to clear, revealing a terrifying form. A giant twin-headed wolf pawed at the ground, acidic saliva dripping from fangs as tall as Sasuke, and glared at the Uchiha with piercing eyes as red as the Sharingan. The heads sniffed at the air. I can still smell you, Sasuke. The heads said together in a deep raspy voice. The black lips pulled back over the man-sized fangs in an almost demonic twin smile. Huge black claws snapped out of their sheaths and the giant white wolf leapt up. The spine twisted, sending the vertebrae cracking. The giant body began to whirl just like Kiba's original attack, but much more violently. The air literally began sucking toward Kiba and Akamaru, leaving people in the audience gasping for breath. Two distorted voices sounded from within the vortex. Wolf fang over fang. The attack took off and rocketed toward Sasuke, drawn by the smell of Akamaru's urine. Holy, Sasuke began. Biscuit barreled into the Uchiha, knocking him into action. Sasuke began moving, but the attack outclassed him. Kiba and Akamaru hit Sasuke's fleeing back, and the power began to rip him apart. Kiba and Akamaru pulled back and cancelled the jutsu before Sasuke died, just leaving him unable to continue fighting. Haha, we did it, Akamaru. Kiba was ecstatic. The proctor landed next to the Inuzuka. Kiba looked the man in the eyes, startled to face the Sharingan. Kiba stumbled back as the world began to melt around him. Sasuke's mangled body pieced itself back together, stood, and casually began wiping blood off his face. That was my genjutsu. He smirked and pulled out his kusanagi. I never even cast a jutsu in this fight. In reality, the fight hasn't started. He placed the blade against Kiba's neck. These eyes see chakra as colors. I can see you're almost on empty. You can't even get away from my blade. Give up. Kiba's slitted eyes were enraged. I'll never give up. Akamaru, he called. He received a whine in response. He flicked his eyes behind the Uchiha, seeing Biscuit pinning the bigger dog to the ground, teeth fastened firmly around his neck. I'll say it again. Give up. Now. Kiba went to make a move, but was stopped by a hand on his shoulder. It was Kurenai. You did well, Kiba, but this match is over. You don't have enough chakra to continue. I won't let you kill yourself. The proctor appeared. For real this time. I'm calling the match. Kiba Inuzuka is unable to continue. Sasuke Uchiha will move on to the next round. Uzaga Hikori vs Shikamaru. Nara Uzaga and Shikamaru faced off. The shadow user had once more given his father's Chunin jacket to Ino to watch over. The stone nin had replaced his purple gloves with bandages that were wrapped tightly. He'd done something to his hands. I've heard some great things about you, Leaf Nin. Uzaga complimented. Shikamaru nodded. Likewise. My teammate, Ino, wouldn't stop talking about how I was gonna get beaten badly by the Tsuchikage's grandson. The two shared a smile. Ino, Uzaga mulled the name over. That's the blonde, right? Shikamaru nodded again. Nice. He cracked his neck. Well, Shikamaru Nara, let's start our fight. He grabbed a kunai from his weapon pouch and launched himself at his opponent. I know you fight long range, so I'm gonna turn up the heat. Shikamaru narrowly dodged each slash, barely moving back into the sides. He flipped back, his foot connecting solidly on Uzaga's chin. He landed in a crouch, hands falling into a familiar sign. Not so fast, Nara. I know all about your shadow jutsu. You won't catch. He tried getting away. I can't move. He thought back. You connected our shadows with that kick. Shikamaru smirked. Shadow possession jutsu. Success. Uzaga began to struggle. It's no use. This close, my shadow will keep you completely immobile. But the stone nin kept trying. He was steadily regaining movement, and the shadow user had to step things up. He made another sign. Shadow strangle jutsu. The shadows split into two arms that began snaking around the stone nin. One wrapped his arms up, tying them behind his back. The other wrapped its fingers around Uzaga's neck. The teen struggled to breathe. Shikamaru started to sweat, knowing the jutsu wouldn't last long. He put an extra strong squeeze on his opponent's neck, and released the jutsu. Uzaga dropped to the ground. He stood back up shakily, breathing hard. Didn't know about that, he declared. He coughed, and a little blood dripped from his mouth. You really went for the kill there. I can respect that. His voice was raspy from the strain. That jutsu doesn't last long. It gets weaker as time goes on. But it's pretty good for a quick finish. Usually. Shikamaru smiled. Uzaga smiled back. I can see this is going to be interesting. He made the snake seal. I think it's time for an earth, wind and fire combo. He slammed his bandaged hands on the ground. Earth style. Rock pillar. Rock burst from the ground at Shikamaru's feet, sending him into the air as Uzaga made the monkey seal. Wind style. Trunade. He pulled his hands apart. A small green tornado was spinning violently between them. He rotated his hands a little, and pushed the attack forward. It hit the ground and started spinning faster at the point where Shikamaru was falling. It grew, catching the shadow user and spinning him in the vortex. Finally, the stone nin formed the tiger seal. Fire style. Inferno. He brought his hands apart again, a ball of flames crackling to life. He casually threw the ball at the base of the winds, causing the tornado to explode into a flaming corona of death. This time, the use of three natures seemed not to bother Uzaga. And I think the victory goes to me. He was about to turn, but found himself immobilized once more. You forgot one of the main skills a ninja has. Escape. Shikamaru allowed the stone nin to slap his face in embarrassment. Substitution. Of course. Yeah, it's a real drag to be fighting someone who doesn't think as far ahead as I do. Uzaga could hear the smirk in his voice. You know, the stone nin started, even though you have me immobile, you shouldn't be so confident. Shikamaru laughed. It's not confidence. I'm convinced. No, it's actually arrogance. Uzaga smirked. Shikamaru was confused. What do you mean? Uzaga exerted force on the shadows, enough to drop something from his hand. It was a small sphere wrapped in paper, with the kanji for light emblazoned on the front. Shikamaru's eyes widened. The light bomb hit the ground and exploded in a burst of piercing white light. I swiped that when you kicked me. Uzaga boasted. The light hadn't affected him because he had his back to it. Shikamaru took the blast full force, and his pupils were almost non-existent. Son of a bitch. He cursed. I can't see. That's kind of the point. The stone nin teased. He slammed his hands together in the snake seal once more and crouched, jamming his right arm into the ground. When he pulled it up, it was covered in rock up to the elbow. Earth style. Crumble fist. He covered the space between the two of them in one leap, crashing his fist into Shikamaru's face. The shadow user fell back. When he picked himself up, he was grinning in Uzaga's general direction. What's so funny? Shadow possession jutsu. Success. Again. Uzaga flicked his eyes to the ground. His shadow was connected to Shikamaru's once more. I shouldn't have attacked, he realized. Bingo. Shikamaru agreed. He switched from the rat seal to the bird seal. Ninja art. Shadow stitching jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow reared up, splitting into eighths before stabbing back into Uzaga. The stone nin screamed. You mother, this is one of my clan's best jutsu. It's offensive, which is something the Nara clan doesn't have enough of. We're trappers. This does both. He was smug. I'll get out of this. Uzaga vowed. Shikamaru shook his head. You're not gonna get the chance. He made another seal. Ninja art. Shadow sinking jutsu. The threads of shadow snapped taut, dragging Uzaga to his knees. Uzaga's shadow started to spread beneath him, darkening and beginning to swirl. The stone nin began to sink. Damn it. He forced his hands together in the monkey seal. Wind style. Updraft. He shifted his bottom hand to where both palms faced the ground as a burst of air struggled to lift him out of the shadows. He continued to sink, albeit slowly. Give it up. There's no escaping the shadow sinking. Shikamaru declared. I won't die here. I'm gonna be the leader of this village someday. Uzaga let out a scream, pushing more chakra through his hands. The bandages wrapped around them ripped apart and flew down into the swirling shadows, revealing that the stone nin had done something to cause massive burns across his hands. He started lifting back up. You're pretty resilient, I'll give you that, Shikamaru said. But that's not gonna be enough. This jutsu is too powerful for you to escape. I'm the exception, Uzaga announced. I'll prove you wrong every time. He shot out of the shadows, snapping the tendrils that held him. He hovered 10 feet over the ground, blood dripping in a constant flow. He brought his hands together, canceling his jutsu. As he dropped, he gathered chakra. I'll just catch you again when you land. Shikamaru shouted. Then I'll tear the ground apart. He pulled his hands apart. A transparent sphere floated between them. Another sphere glowed brightly in the middle. This is the power of my grandfather. The dust style. Shikamaru gaped. Dust style. Up in the cage's box, Onoki beamed proudly. His pride, his grandson, had pulled it off. It was by no means perfect. The spherical version was the basic, the weakest. He himself could perform cubes and cones, and Mew, his teacher, could use cylinders. The differences in shape were reflective of the generation gap between the users. The crowd was muttering, not understanding, and the other cage were apprehensive. He taught that boy the dust style. Tsunade wondered. That fool old man. This doesn't bode well. Yagura noted. Uzaga raised his hands over his head. Dust style. Atomic dismantling jutsu. He threw the attack down, and it flew fast at the ground. The outer sphere expanded, and buried itself half in the ground. The smaller orb touched the earth and exploded. The first orb kept the burst from coming out above ground, but it was released full force underneath. The ground seemed to implode, almost completely vanishing and leaving a deep pit. Shikamaru fell, hitting an edge, and began rolling down the incline. He smashed his head into a rock, blood spurting from the back of his skull. The proctor appeared at the bottom of the pit, checking on the shadow user. He felt for a pulse before standing and calling for a medic. Two dropped down next to him, putting the Nara boy on a stretcher. Shikamaru Nara has been knocked out. He will live, but cannot continue the battle. Uzaga Hikori will advance to the next round. He pointed at the stone nin, who was slumping against the wall, panting and sweating heavily. He crawled up into the stairwell to the competitor's box while the proctor made the snake seal in the pit. Earth style. Shifting sands. The ground at the bottom of the pit started to well up, evening out at the sides steadily until the field was back to the way it was before. He smiled. Next competitors. Sakura Haruno versus Ichi. Come on, you leaf bitch. Ichi called. The fight had been raging for close to 20 minutes, and Sakura couldn't get close enough to land a hit. Ichi was a smart opponent, taking no chances of fighting close range. All his attacks came from mid to long range, taking advantage of the fact that Sakura's monster strength was useless far away. Or so he thought. Sakura made the snake seal before channeling chakra into her right fist. Earth style. Shattered chasm jutsu. She punched the ground, transferring the chakra. The earth began to crack, small ones spreading out, but a huge one stretching towards Ichi. You'll have to do better than that. He bit his thumb, making several seals. Summoning jutsu. Dual-headed snake. A burst of smoke cleared to show a long blue snake flying through the air at Sakura. Halfway along its body it split into two trunks, leading to two separate heads. The heads had red eyes and armor plating. Ichi made another seal. Snake steel net. The snake opened both mouths, spitting more snakes. Each snake opened both mouths, spawning more and more snakes until a wall of slithering death was set to wash over Sakura. They began wrapping around her, and soon she was covered. Don't bite her yet. I want to have some fun first. Ichi grinned with some strange combination of sadism and perversion. He called the original snake back and merged with it, much like his teammates could. His hands turned into snake heads. He opened the mouths. Spinning snake thorn. He launched two spiraling projectiles, with ninja wire attached. They spun at Sakura, going around and tying her up. They landed behind her, exploding and sending Sakura to the ground. The snakes slithered off her, staying close by. Ichi stalked over, turning one hand back to normal and preparing the other with another spinning snake thorn. You're a very pretty little girl. Ichi smirked. He reached down, untying Sakura's kimono top and putting his normal hand on her breasts that were still covered by a black undershirt. In the competitor's box, Naruto and Sasuke were livid. Creepy snake bastard. I'm going down there. You with me, Sasuke. The Uchiha already had the Sharingan flared, and the two stepped for the door. Uzaga stood in the way, having finally made it up the stairs. It looked like a strong breeze would knock him over. Move over, Sasuke commanded. Calm down. This is something every kunoichi goes through eventually. The proctor won't let it go very far though. And your Hokage would step in before he would. You can't interrupt the fight. You must have faith in your teammate. The two-leaf nin were about to blast past him anyway when Jikai spoke up. He's right. Look now. Ichi had made the mistake of turning his other hand back to normal so he could try ripping Sakura's top off. He had to pull back a little to do it, and Sakura capitalized. She drove her feet into his chest with increased strength, cracking a few ribs and throwing him back. She wiggled free of the loosened wire and tied her kimono back. Ichi got back to his feet, grasping his chest. He glowered at her. And her. Now, the snakes reconverged, ready to sink their teeth into Sakura's body and fulfill the dark wishes of their summoner. Sakura charged her fist with chakra again, just slamming it down this time. The ground cracked even more violently than before, sending chunks of earth flying into the air and taking the snakes with it. The pinkett kept moving, leaping from rock to rock as they flew up. She landed close to Ichi, unleashing another punch that snapped the mist nin's neck, sending his head spinning around till it was completely backwards. The snake user reached up and twisted his neck back with terrible cracking noises. Not too bad, girl. He smiled another horrible smile. I'm gonna enjoy carving you into pieces in front of all these people. Sakura wasn't prepared for an opponent with a broken neck being able to snap it back into place. I'll kill you slowly, and painfully. He slammed his hands together, transforming them back into snake heads. Spinning snake thorns. He fired the projectiles at close range. Sakura twisted and bent back, completely dodging the first thorn. The second scraped past her, spattering blood from her side. Ah, there it is. Ichi smiled. While Sakura was hunched over, he swiped his fingers over the blood dripping from her and popped them into his mouth one by one. Then he stiffened. Fake blood, moron. Poisoned blood. Sakura smirked as she stood straight. Her kimono hadn't even been torn. It's an advanced paralytic. You can barely move, right? She ran at him. At the last possible second, Ichi's hands snapped forward, securing themselves around her neck. Fool. You can't poison a snake. He laughed. He began to choke the life out of her. She was slowly turning blue when her knee shot up, striking him in the chest. He groaned and stepped back, hands still around her throat. She was dragged down. Little bitch. Ichi gasped. He drove one fist into her face repeatedly, keeping her neck pinned with the other hand. Forget slowly. I'll kill you now. But it will be painful. He vowed. For the first time Sakura could see Ichi's teeth. The incisors were filed down into fangs. He bared them and shot his head toward the soft flesh of her neck, intending to end it. He stopped when he felt the blade of a kunai and the blade of a sword lightly touch his throat. Naruto and Sasuke were behind him, weapons trained on him. He flicked his eyes forward again to find himself staring into Kakashi's Sharingan. Sleep. The copy ninja commanded. Ichi's head began to droop, and the two genin behind him pulled their blades away. The medics came and picked up both fighters as the proctor jumped down beside the three-leaf nin. Sakura Haruno has been defeated. Because of the interruption, and the fact that Ichi has been incapacitated, neither will advance. Because of their meddling, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki will be disqualified from the exams. In the competitors' box, Uzaga and Gaara were both livid. Sand floated around the redhead, and Uzaga stalked out and jumped up to the cage's box. The guards, not immediately realizing who he was, nearly took him out. Let me pass, he cried. They admitted him with mutterings of, yes, Lord Uzaga. And, sorry, Lord Uzaga. The stone nin stalked up to his grandfather. Gramps, overturn the decision. Why, I thought you'd be happy with less competition. The Tsuchikage reasoned. Are you crazy? Uzaga exploded. We all know I'm gonna make Chunin. The only reason I wanted to participate in the exams is because I wanted to fight strong guys. These two are tough as hell. I can feel it. Put them back in the exams. The Tsuchikage contemplated. Tsunade nodded vigorously, and Yagura glared at Uzaga for having the nerve. Very well. He disappeared. Back on the field, Onoki reappeared beside the proctor. I'm reversing the disqualification. Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha will continue in the exams. He turned to Kakashi and his students. But the two of them are on a short leash. Any more disturbances and they will be disqualified. Kajika versus Neji. Hyuga. Neji walked down the steps, meeting Sasuke and Naruto on the way up. He nodded to them, they nodded back, and Neji stepped into the light of the arena. Kajika was waiting for him. He felt mildly apprehensive after watching how he almost slaughtered Ino. These mist nin were brutal and aggressive. I just love sinking my teeth into you leaf nin. Kajika said lowly. He smiled, showing small, pointed teeth. Neji stared ahead, looking unaffected. He shoved his nerves down past his stomach, where they couldn't bother him. Kajika of the mist, it is time to begin our battle. Neji sank into his stance. I agree. Kajika formed 3 seals. Ox, horse, ram. Water style. Ice darts jutsu. He opened his mouth wide, firing multiple missiles of ice at Neji. It was the Hyuga's turn to smirk. Rotation. He gathered his chakra in the chakra points, spun himself, and released the pent-up energy in the form of an impenetrable blue dome. The ice darts shattered harmlessly. You won't hit me with any attacks as long as I have chakra. We'll see about that. Kajika began forming rapid seals, hands moving so fast that only the 2 Sharingan users in the arena could follow them. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. He opened his mouth again and unleashed a constant torrent of water from his mouth. It immediately took the shape of a dragon, taking flight at Neji, who could only smirk again at the futile attempt to attack. Rotation. The dragon hit the dome of energy, displacing on contact. As soon as the water hit the dome, Kajika began more seals. When the water hit, he used chakra to make it follow the rotation of Neji's attack. Water style. Clinging grand whirlpool. The water pressed against the rotation, chakra keeping it from dispersing. The vortex was not because of the dome anymore, but because of Kajika's jutsu. Eventually, Neji had to cancel the attack, and the water converged on him. I'll drown you like a rat before I tear you apart. Kajika declared. Water style. Hard water spike. Kajika's right arm began to glow before water soaked through his skin and transformed into a drill-like spike over his hand. It's time to die. He formed more rapid hand seals. Water style. Water gathering jutsu. As Kajika drove his fist into the vortex, intent on spearing Neji, the water around the Hyuga swirled even faster, pulling toward Kajika's attack. As soon as the tip of the hard water spike touched the water, it spluttered and was sucked into Kajika's attack, making it more powerful. The spear hit Neji's chest, burrowing in. The water turned red from Neji's chest, turning all the water and leaving red foam flying behind the mist nin. Neji coughed blood into Kajika's face, making the shark-like genin smirk and draw it in with his tongue. Neji's lips began moving, and garbled words spilled out. What was that? Kajika taunted, leaning in. The Hyuga drew a gasping breath, then wet his lips. You're in my circle, he whispered. Kajika looked down, standing in the middle of a glowing yin-yang, with 3 glowing green circles around it. As his eyes widened, another circle appeared with an ominous noise. What is this? Kajika demanded. Neji smiled faintly. 8 trigrams. 128 palms. He drove his fingers into the chakra points of the mist nin's body. 2 palms. He went in again. 4 palms. The hard water spike cancelled, and Neji dropped back to his feet, using the momentum of his attack to stay on his feet, falling forward to continue attacking. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. 128 pascals. Neji's blood gushed particularly forcefully, interrupting his attack, and bringing him to his knees. Kajika's mouth was also dripping, and he smiled no longer. Leaf bastard. Where had Neji heard that before? He though back to his battle in the forest. What was that girl's name? Tayuya of the North Gate. That was it. Was it possible that this mist nin was working for Orochi? He didn't finish his thought. Kajika slammed his hand into the side of the kneeling Hyuga's head, knocking him to the ground. Neji's vision went dark. The proctor appeared beside the 2 of them. Bring the medics, he cried. Neji Hyuga cannot finish the battle. Kajika will move to the next round. Naruto Uzumaki vs Rock Lee. I have been waiting for a long time to fight you, Naruto. Lee declared. The boy with the bowl cut smiled at his rival. Naruto nodded. I've wanted to fight you too. I guess I will be the one to start our battle. Here I come, Naruto. Lee flung a kunai at Naruto, who dodged deftly. Dynamic entry. Naruto whirled around to get a face full of Lee's foot. The blonde flew back and furrowed a trench with his body. Son of a bitch. Naruto muttered as he stood back up. Before Naruto could prepare himself, Lee was on him again. Leaf hurricane. Naruto ducked so the kick flew over his head, but the second, lower kick knocked him back to the ground. Naruto stood again, but Lee was attacking once more. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto shouted. 3 clones appeared and threw the original high into the air. They whirled and struck out at the green-clad ninja. Ru. 2. Lee fell back as the original Naruto dropped down from the sky, hands clasped together. Uzumaki Barrage. He slammed his hands into Lee's head, driving him to the ground where he made a small crater. Lee pulled himself up, looking no worse for wear. That was a very good combo, Naruto. Lee decided. He started to run at Naruto, and his clones jumped to defend him. The handsome devil of the Leaf Village jumped up and spun into a chest-high kick, blasting through the first clone. The kick propelled him up, leading to a higher kick, destroying another clone. Lee was sent even higher into the air, and the third kick killed the third clone. Lee smirked. Severe Leaf Hurricane. Lee spun once more, vertically, and dropped his heel on top of Naruto's head, dragging him forward to crash his head into the ground. Lee leapt back, getting back into his iron fist stance. I guess this is where the training pervy sage put me through is gonna come in handy. Naruto thought. He began channeling his chakra to his feet. I've gotten pretty fast, Lee. You may not be able to keep up. Lee laughed. I am glad to see you can joke around, Naruto. No one is faster than me. We'll see. Naruto vanished, only leaving a dust cloud. Lee smiled, showing off his pearly teeth. He kicked one leg, then the other. Thick bar weights slid out from under his leg warmers, leaving huge craters. I guess we will. Lee disappeared too. The 2 ninja clashed repeatedly, unseen. The only ones who could keep up were ninja, and they only saw flashes of light where the 2 collided. Very few, Sasuke, Kakashi, and any member of the Hyuga clan, could see the movements as they were happening. The 2 stopped for a moment, to catch their breath. You have gotten fast, Naruto, but you cannot keep up with me. Naruto was hunched over panting, but Lee had yet to break a sweat. I'll agree. I'm not up to your level. But I'm still gonna win. He summoned a clone and started forming the Rasengan. The blonde rushed his fellow Leaf Nin at full speed. Lee let his body go slack for an instant as Naruto closed in. Then, he dropped backwards, flicking his leg up. Leaf Rising Wind. The kick caught Naruto's chin, sending his flying high up into the air. Lee vanished off the ground, appearing over Naruto in a somersault. Leaf Axe Drop. At the apex of his flip, Lee stuck out a leg, bringing it down on Naruto's head with a devastating cracking noise. The Naruto underneath him, still holding the Rasengan, disappeared. The Rasengan started to drop toward the ground, where the real Naruto leapt up. He grabbed the spiral sphere in his hand and continued toward Lee, who was falling toward the attack. How'd y'all like my fake-out Rasengan? He cried, connecting the usually deadly attack with the other Leaf Nin. Lee's eyes widened, but true to the name, the fake-out Rasengan didn't blast through him. Instead, the attack burst apart, sending an explosive wind that threw both genin toward the ground. Naruto made a few hand seals. Wind style. Wind blade kunai. He stuck a hand into his weapons pouch behind him, pulling out a kunai on his middle finger. As it spun, it drew some of the winds to it, forming a fine coating of chakra around it. He flung the weapon at the falling taijutsu user. Lee drew his own kunai and let it fly, intent on deflecting the attack. The 2 collided, but the wind chakra cut through his kunai, Naruto's attack keeping a straight course to him. The green-clad boy focused his meager chakra reserves. Dancing Leaf Shadow. Naruto knew what was coming, but was confused. When did he open the first gate? Lee's bandages swirled around Naruto, pulling him tight to the older boy's chest. Oh, Primary Lotus. Lee slammed the blonde into the ground, but before he could get away the boy detonated. Lee was knocked far away, suit singed and bandages on fire. As he put them out, Naruto stepped into sight. He was panting. Shadow Clone Explosion. Pervy Sage taught me. Give me some chakra, you bastard fox. He demanded internally. The deadly orange chakra flared for an instant, so fast that only Sasuke and Kakashi saw it. Then, it transformed into the normal blue, but flowed around Naruto like a flame before drawing back into him. Jiraiya nodded subtly. He's finally learned how to siphon chakra from the fox and make it his own. When the light show was over, Naruto stood tall, breathing normally. His various scrapes and bruises had changed, looking days old now instead of fresh. The only drawback is that he doesn't heal completely, because the chakra changes before the healing takes effect. Naruto cracked his neck. Well, Lee? He asked expectantly. The handsome devil of the Leaf Village stood back up, brushing himself off. He pulled a small sphere from his pouch. Guy-sensei told me to only use this when I was fighting a very tough opponent. I believe you qualify, Naruto. Lee unwrapped the sphere, holding an ordinary bonbon. However, I do not like chocolate much. I will trust Guy-sensei. He popped the bonbon in his mouth, and Guy stiffened in the stands. Oh no, Lee. He hid his head in his hands, causing other spectators to stare at him. Sweat poured off of him in streams. Back in the arena, Lee stiffened as well, at the same time as his sensei. Then he dropped to the ground in a very undignified position. Are you okay? Naruto asked. Lee suddenly sat bolt upright, a dark blush coloring his cheeks. He was on his feet, seemingly from his sitting position, leaving the crowd in a state of wonder. He swayed unsteadily on his feet, shifting from side to side. Lee, are you? Lee was on him before he could finish his sentence. Naruto fell back after Lee's fist collided with his face. Naruto was up quickly, putting space between them. Damn, he exclaimed. Lee was stooping to pick up his training weights, holding them almost reverently, and yet also like a parent would hold a child. He cuddled them. Naruto put his hands in his weapons pouch again, drawing a kunai for each finger. Alright, he said warily. Let's see just what happens. He flung all 10 kunai, each making a beeline for the bob-haired nin. Lee kept swaying for a moment before flipping his hands around rapidly, connecting his weights together. Before a few seconds had passed, he was holding a full-length bow staff. He moved it almost faster than even the Sharingan could follow, knocking every kunai out of the air. What was that? Lee slurred. He's drunk. Naruto realized. He seemed to remember a story he'd overheard Guy telling Kakashi once, about how Lee had taken one drink of sake, and nearly destroyed a restaurant. Lee's eyes seemed for focus on Naruto for the first time in the last few moments, and he took a shuddering step forward. The blonde didn't think he was going to make it across the arena to him, but Lee vanished and Naruto had to go on defense, ducking and weaving, letting the fox have a little leeway so he could dodge fast enough. Lee's strikes were sporadic, and there was no pattern. He was skilled enough to be able to strike, and then pull the staff around in ways that shouldn't have been possible to attack from an entirely different angle, in mere milliseconds. Finally, one of Lee's attacks scored home, the end of his staff bashing into Naruto's head. The end snapped back, held by a length of chain, and slammed into Lee's head as well. Both fell back, blood dripping. Naruto sat up, followed by Lee, whose eyes were clear. Lee, what the hell was that? The blonde asked. What was what, Naruto? He looked puzzled. I do not understand. Naruto furrowed his brows. Forget it. Let's end this fight. Both leapt back and started to power up. Lee crossed his arms over his chest and the air began to raise up around him. Gate of Rest, open. His various scratches and the burns he received from Naruto's attacks healed completely, and his eyes turned completely white. Gate of Life, open. Lee's skin turned a dark red color. Gate of Pain, open. Lee's chakra level skyrocketed, leaving a cylinder of green energy around him that shot high into the sky. Gate of Closing, open. He quivered all over, and the ground began to shatter under his feet. Naruto formed the cross seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 100 perfect copies formed around him, hiding him from Lee's pupil-less eyes. You cannot hide from me forever, Naruto. Lee screamed, voice a few notes deeper. I don't need forever, Naruto vowed. 2 clones stepped up beside him while the others got ready for the fight of their lives. Lee snapped his staff back together and rushed the clones, tearing the ground asunder and leaving a smoking trail in his wake. Naruto and his 2 clones were standing apart from the larger group, and Lee decided to leave them alone for the moment, charging around all the clones, making a huge circle. He broke up his staff, revealing the chains connecting it. He continued disconnecting the weights until all that was left was chains that he wrapped around all the clones as he raced around. Many of the clones at the edges of the group had already dispersed. Lee stepped back, grabbing tightly to the end of the chains. He hefted the length back, sending all the remaining clones into the air. Lee swung the chain around like it was a lasso, sending the clones jerking around in a gigantic version of the circle Lee had been running. It is time for me to end this battle. This is my last attack. The chains began to unravel, leaving Lee a sort of ladder to leap to the top. He flashed from chain to chain, appearing at the top and driving his fist into the middle of the group. The chains split apart, leaving the clones to fall. Thunder Lotus Chain. Lee descended into the midst of the group, throwing rapid, powerful, killer punches that blasted straight through a clone with every hit. Lee had missed some clones in his zeal to get rid of them, so 10 or 15 fell above him. They linked eyes with their counterparts below, and they all made a single sign in unison. Shadow Clone Explosion. Chain. All the remaining clones detonated at once, with Lee at the center of the blast. The genin screamed, but it was drowned out by the explosions. The blasts died, and Lee continued flying at the last 3 blonde ninja in the arena, his gates beginning the healing process to compensate for his damage. It's through, Lee, Naruto declared as his last 2 clones vanished. He held a Rasengan in his hand, but 4 white blades jutted from it, spinning erratically. I can show this to you, Lee, because I know you'll survive it, he said darkly. The sphere was unstable, and on the urge of bursting apart, but red chakra bubbled out of Naruto's body and into the attack. Naruto's eyes were still blue, but they were slitted. The Rasengan's normal blue changed to purple with the added chakra. Hope this doesn't take you out for too long, Naruto said almost apologetically. Lee kept coming, his fall unable to be halted. Naruto's attack began to scream. Wind style. Rasengan. The blonde roared as he drove his attack at the falling genin. As soon as it touched, Naruto detonated it, making it much less deadly. All the force impacted and formed a giant tornado with Lee as the ground, the winds blasting around him while he floated in the eye of the storm, connecting the attack to the ground. The wind fell in on itself, shooting Lee into the air again, out of the winds, and toward the ground. Naruto blinked his eyes back, leapt up, and caught Lee, lowering him to the ground. The boy was alive, and would be able to fight again, even if it wasn't soon. Jikai Hikori vs. Gaara. The proctor fixed the field again, but it was in vain as the last 2 powerhouses destroyed it with no trouble. The fight had raged for a half hour, but it was apparent soon after the start that Gaara's sand wasn't much of a match for Jikai's lava style, but Gaara kept his cool. It was only when Gaara's sand tsunami was transformed into glass by one of Jikai's powerful attacks that the sand nin's composure started to crack. Jikai had figured out after seeing Gaara's jutsu up close that he was the Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Shukaku. Gaara, who had much more control over his impulses, was losing the fight against the demon inside, who sensed one of his kind just hundreds of feet away from him. 4 tails, Gaara rasped, sand swirling around him, starting to cling to his form. Jikai gazed with apprehension as an unearthly, demonic wind was raised around the 2 competitors. Both boys felt their red hair stand on end, Jikai's more impressive because of the length. Gaara's eyes were bloodshot, and the clinging sand began to take the shape of Gaara's miniature Shukaku form. Jikai felt rage that wasn't his stir inside him. Shukaku. His own deepened voice acknowledged. He unzipped his bubble coat, throwing it away. His white shirt had already burned away, and thick red hair grew out all over Jikai's chest and arms. He felt that hair stand as well, and it began to fall away from him, skin peeling to reveal the one-tail form of the 4 tails. The blood. Gaara didn't have the luxury of different forms. He was all in. He kept himself in the miniature Shukaku form, still exerting some modicum of control. Meanwhile, bones started to sprout out across the blood beast. Another tail sprouted up. By this time, most of the audience had realized what was happening, and they started bolting for the doors. However, the way was blocked by thick wooden planks that would not yield. They stared in horror as Gaara started to lose control, growing to a massive size as the bones and blood that used to be Jikai shuddered, muscle rippling into existence over the powerful demonic body. A 3rd tail formed. Both only had one more step to unleash the full fury of their tailed beasts. Naruto looked on in horror, knowing finally what drew him to Jikai Hikori, and the boy was truly terrified that someone else transformed in the horrendous way he did. Yamato. Kakashi's voice rang out. A masked member of Konoha's Anbu Black Ops appeared in the middle of the arena, between the 2 beastly forces. Both sets of terrible eyes flicked to the man together, and they both started moving forward in assault. The man clasped his hands together in the snake seal. Wood style. Shodai sealing crystal. From out of the ground erupted 2 green crystals, identical to the one around Naruto's neck. They shot toward the Biju with incredible speed, impaling both demons. They tried fighting back, but the man called Yamato was already making rapid seals. boar, dog, ram, monkey, and tiger. Hokage-style elder jutsu. 10th Edict on Enlightenment. Yamato sat on the ground, seemingly oblivious to the fact that two demons were tearing up the earth at their sides trying to rip him apart. He held out a hand with a kanji on it, and 10 wooden pillars burst from the ground, each topped with an animal head. The pillars shot forward, stretching towards the Jinchuriki, 5 to each. The teeth of the pillars gnashed and sank into the flesh of the demons, sealing their chakra. The beasts roared in defiance, but it didn't matter. Within seconds both demons were in human form once more, and dropped to the ground. Both were unconscious. Because of the tailed beast's rampage, both Jikai and Gaara had been taken out of the tournament. Neither would advance. That left Sasuke, Uzaga, Kajika, and Naruto moving on to the next round. The matches would be Sasuke versus Uzaga, and Kajika versus Naruto. Then, the final match. It was decided that there would be a week to heal up and prepare for the next matches, and that the people in the stands would have arrangements for quarters.